What is up, everyone? Give me a quick second. Let me turn the music off, wherever the hell it is on here. All right, what's up? How are you guys all doing? I know we're a little bit early. The actual meeting itself starts at about 10 o'clock. And let me know, too, how the sound is. So feed sound you guys said was good. Let me know how mic sound is. But, yeah, at 10 a.m. Eastern time is when you're going to start hearing them talk about CFTC. Until then, I got some stuff up on the screen that I want to share with you, but I want to make sure that everyone can hear good. So let me know what y'all think of the sound. Twitch radio chimes in. Oh, damn. Well, looks like we got some ice this morning. Be right back. Got to clean it. Yeah, it was really, really cold. Legendary Bullfog says, what's going on, Klaus? Glad to hear from you. Glad to see you on the stream. Oh, baby, I like it raw. Klaus, what is the rare sports card you own? I have an MJ insert. Ooh, holy shit. All right, so the rarest sports card I own. Okay, well, not rare in quantity, rare in the state that it's in. I've got a 71 Black Pete Rose, right, where it's got the black border on it. I got a 71 Pete Rose that is highly graded. So it's rare in that aspect, but there's a ton of them. Like, for instance, of that card alone, I at least got 20 or 30 easily of just that card, but it's the graded version that's rare, so maybe that's what you're talking about. But yeah, that Michael Jordan one is actually pretty cool. No, wait, I take it back. The rarest one, I have a Carlton Fisk used bat chip card that I have. That's like signed and all that. That's definitely the rarest one. If you want rarity, like out of one out of how many type thing, yeah, it's total tea in the face, man. So you guys are saying that Mike is all good. Well, like I said, we got a couple minutes until this whole thing starts. Does anyone out there want to dork out and kind of learn a little bit of financials? So you can kind of see some of the red flags and some of the things too when it comes to crypto companies to give you an idea of crypto exchanges, like what their margins are. If that's something you guys want to get into quick before the CFTC guys start talking, let me know. And we'll gladly go over it. What's up, Vlad? Good to see you on the stream as well. But yeah, if you guys want to take a real quick deep dive into financials so I could show you how to find stuff and how to look up stuff, just let me know in the comments and we'll start this way. Otherwise, yeah, let me know what you guys want to talk about until the Senate Ag Committee comes on and hopefully drops the hammer and hopefully we get some answers from the CFTC. And yes, for those that are joining the stream right now, we are very early, okay? At 10 a.m. is when this actually starts. So you got 45 minutes to do whatever you want until the actual stream starts. But yeah, if you guys want to start learning about financials, if you want to go over heat map, CPI data, don't forget we got CPI data coming up in less than 2 weeks. Holy shit, we need another number there. I need to drop off my MTB at the shop while listening stealth. No, I got you. Good morning for the crown. I see there. Derek Moyer says, what would be a good scenario today relating to XRP? For today, you're not going to see anything tied specifically into XRP or XLM. Today's hearing, right? Senate Ag Committee, it's going to be very high up there on CFTC. Now, granted, they didn't go after. They were kind of fluff with the CFTC earlier. But what happens with the Senate Ag Committee people, right? They're the first ones to go at it, and that's why I wanted to cover this. I wanted to see why, if anything, right, are they the first group, right? What's their big thing? Now, Maxine Waters was the first to announce a hearing, but her hearing isn't until, I believe it's December 13th. So on this, don't look for anything like heavy XLM, heavily XRP specific. Look more for crypto regulation as a whole and signs of what right now Congress in the Senate, what they're going to be looking at in order to regulate crypto. So this is what we're looking at for today. High level kind of fun stuff. Let's see, what else do we got? Nathan Stevens chimed in and says, just tuned in. Sounds great. We have a Jordan rookie card. Nice. I got a lot of Jordan fans out there, man. I like that kind of stuff. Well, baby, I like her. Ross says, I logged off to CBW. Is that the move? Cold storage. Cold storage is the way to go. Okay. Yeah, the Coinbase wallet thing, all right? The Coinbase wallet thing, that's messed up, all right? Let's be totally real here. Let's go off algorithm script. Let's just talk, okay? We're going to talk Coinbase, right? Just for a little bit. Coinbase wallet, stopping support for XRP, XLM. Yes, are they saving money with that move? Of course they are. But I can show you their financials that any money that they saved with that move isn't putting a dent in the hole in the side of this battleship right here. She is leaking water bad. So by removing XRP and XLM from the wallets, is that saving them money? Yes. Are they at that level of desperation for cost savings? Okay, if they're at that kind of like a, you know, micro level in terms of like a cost analysis part, like going a line by line item on a P&L type thing or a line by line item on a monthly expense, things are messed up. I mean, messed up to the point where Coinbase, if they're cutting costs to that point, they're screwed up. Now, if this is, say, for political, or if they're deeming it as securities and they're trying to get ahead of the stuff, because like I said, there's a lot of fears with centralization regarding XRP and XLM. There's a lot of fears with those as being, you know, securities. I mean, we've seen what happened with LBRY. It wasn't even the fact that LBRY lost in summary judgment. It was the fact that they said, hey, no matter what the outcome of the case, we were drained financially. These cases, man, can just destroy your budgets there, totally destroy your budgets. Twitch chimes in, says Coinbase is doing nothing but trying to minimize their liabilities. Kind of sucks for the rest of it. And that's my whole thing. Okay, so when you're talking about limiting their liabilities, let's take a quick look here. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to highlight in yellow just so you guys know what lines I'm talking about. So we're going to start off really super high, okay? Yeah, maybe we are starting off super high. You guys let me know in the comments below, because apparently I got a lot of friends of the fam here. So here we go. 9 months. For the first 9 months of 2021, they made $5.3 billion in revenue. Okay, I know this says millions, but you have to add 3 zeros. Okay, says it up here in the top in thousands. All right, this is a P&L that we're going over. Okay, so their revenue is down what, $2.7 billion in the first 9 months? That's crazy. That's horrible. So now let's do this. Let's role play. All right, we like to role play on this channel. Now, as we're role playing, I want you to think, hey, this isn't Coinbase. This is some other company. So some other company is down $2.7 billion. That's nuts. That's freaking crazy. All right. So let's just see right now, 2.5. Let's just divide 2.5 by 5.3. Let's dork out a little bit. 47%. Their revenue now is 47% of what it was the first 9 months of 2021. All right. So that's revenue. That's top line. That's how much income is coming in. All right. Here we go. All right. Now you have to start looking at their expenses. All right. OPEX, this OPEX line right here. Okay. You can go through sales, marketing, general administrative. You can go through all those. It's not a big deal. But what you want to do is you actually want to get to their total operating expenses, right? Your total OPEX line, which is right here. And this is where shit gets super freaking scary for Coinbase. And now you can apply this to any other crypto business out there because their business model is based on something that's been tanking here as of late. All right, so look at the lines here. So on this column right here is the first 9 months. So the first 9 months of 2021, they had $3.1 billion in expenses. Holy shit, that's Coinbase, everyone. Now, the first 9 months in 2022, $4.7 billion in expenses. Think about this. Their revenue, okay, their revenue line, all right, went down, all right? So they're down in revenue, but now they are way up in expenses. They're up by about 50% in expenses, and they're down 50% in revenue. So don't think of this as Coinbase. Just think of this as any company out there, and they're like, hey, I'm going to pitch a stock to you. I'm going to pitch a crypto to you. My revenue is down 50% year over year. Oh, well, that doesn't sound too good. And even better, my income is up 50% year over year. Oh, shit. You wouldn't invest in that. That's negative on both aspects. We're down on revenue and we increased our expenses. Their P&L is fucked, everyone. They are totally screwed. So when you start looking at it even deeper, okay, when you start looking at their net stuff, okay, you start looking at what their net is. You're talking they made $2.7 billion here. Now they're losing $2 billion in the same. So again, last year, first 9 months, they made $2.7 million. That's on the net income line we're looking right here, okay? This is before tax, all right? This is pre-tax. So they were up $2.7 billion last year, first 9 months. Now this year, $2 billion loss. That's the mess. So now this, okay, these financials right here, this idea, this concept applies to every other crypto company out there, whether you're a publicly traded company, centralized off exchange operating as a trust, a decentralized exchange, your business model all looks like this. Maybe the numbers and the proportions are a little bit different, but it's the idea that these companies now, their revenue is down from last year, but their expenses are up. Why are their expenses up? Because when they were growing, they just bought new buildings. They hired tons of new people, tons of new infrastructure, tons of IT infrastructure. Their expenses went through the roof. It takes a long time to peel those expenses away. And yet the costs are still through the roof as your revenue is going down. So pretty messed up here when you look at it, that their financials are telling you that they are effed. All right. And here's something really bad. You guys want to know how messed up it is? All right. General and administrative operating expenses. This is how bad it goes. So for the first 9 months of last year, they spent $600 million in general and administrative expenses. They doubled that in this year. So that tells you how bad their cost control is on even their general and administrative line. They've more than doubled what their expenses are year over year. That is a business that's run like absolute shit. Absolute. Whoever is in charge of the financials of this company is a piss poor job. All right. And this is just a basic breakdown. We could take this page after page after page. There's so much data in here that we could go through. Everything from what they purchased, where their loans, all that kind of stuff. All of it right now, okay, all of this right here, you can go even further deeper on. You could go into their trading volume. All of this stuff is publicly listed for US-based companies. But the concept that I'm showing you guys right here, which is up on the top, which is their top line P&L stuff, all this top line P&L stuff is what is happening right now to the crypto economy as a whole. So when you start looking at, hey, how effed are things? Well, let's go even further because you guys want things in the face, right? Jumblies in the face. Let's go deeper, okay? So remember, this is applying to every other crypto out there. The percentages, okay, are going to be different. The percentages of the exchanges are going to be different. But it's the business model. That's right. Okay, so cash. Cash is king, baby, right? Why? Because you need cash to pay for shit. So December 31st, last year, 2021, you ready? They had $7.1 billion in cash. All right, remember, these are all in thousands right here. $7.1 billion. Now, 9 months later, they burnt through $2.1 billion. Oh, shit. Burned through $2.1 billion. Now, wait, stuff gets even worse. Even worse, okay? Remember, you can apply this to all exchanges, all right? And DRise, yes, they did lay off 18% of their people in June. But I can show you that it's not even making a dent in their P&Ls. Like, I can prove any of this stuff to you. It's easy. It's their P&Ls right here. All right, so here's the messed up part. This is the amount of cash, all right? Customer custodial cash. You could see less people are leaving. Ooh, hey there. Let's erase that. I kind of went a little trigger happy there, eh? But this is cash, all right? Less people are holding cash on their exchange. 10.5 billion last year, 9 months later, now 6.5. So 4 billion in cash has been removed out of Coinbase. Guess what, everyone? I'm one of those $4 billion. That's right. I pulled everything off of Coinbase. All my crypto stuff, all my cash, everything is off of Coinbase because I started reading their P&Ls even deeper than, kind of like the surface fluff that you see. All right, so that's cash. Now, wait a minute. Coinbase is really, really trying to screw stuff up because we're going to talk about stuff. They now also list their liabilities, which basically that's what you want to do, right? How much cash do you have? What is your expenses? Right, your liabilities, and what's your income, okay? So right now, they also want to say, hey, we've got a lot of assets on the book that if we need to liquidate, we can. Oh, but daddy, you guys are full of fucking shit. Here we go. They have $59 million in real estate in December of 2021. Now they're saying they have $170 million. So they're like, yeah, okay, here we go. So we got $170 million in real estate. You tell me how fast you can get money for real estate, especially commercial right now. That shit is pennies to the dollar. Commercial real estate's freaking dead out there. Why? Because there were so many people that expanded now that are closing their doors. There's commercial real estate everywhere. So this extra, 110 million that they're adding on their books for assets is bullshit. Because if they needed to sell it tomorrow, anyone with their right mind, all right, who is selling that real estate, and Coinbase comes in, or Coinbase is selling it, and they're like, well, who's selling this property? And they're like, oh, it's Coinbase. They're like, oh, we know they're screwed. This is public information. Offer them 30 cents to the dollar. Coinbase is like, I need money. Boom, sold. So this big amount right here that they gained, that $110 million in assets, is probably closer worth to 60, 70 million. Yeah, so now there's even more holes showing up, okay? And remember, all of these companies play tricks like this, okay? All right, so here's some of the other problems that we're going to deal with. Crypto assets held. They held 988 million in crypto assets, all right? And now this is in their non-current asset bucket, okay? So they held 988, now they're only 623 million. We're talking 365 million taken out in crypto assets. Wow, so they're really selling a lot of stuff, aren't they? Yes, they are. All right, what else do we got here, everyone? And just so you guys know, we're just doing a Coinbase deep dive right now because at 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we're going to get to the Senate Ag Committee. But right now, we're diving deep, showing you out there that exchanges, centralized, decentralized, they're all under the same financial stress that I am showing you right here. All right, so what else do you guys want to talk about? Because we could talk about even their liabilities, which is messed up, because their liabilities are messed up. So anyways, that's what we got. That's a deep dive. We got DVR says, hello from Holland. Will Gary be mentioned during the hearing? I wonder if someone will bring it up, but honestly, I don't think so, because I don't think that would be proper for them to do so. As of right now, we have the CFTC chairman as the only one listed. Twitch says they should only have 7.1 billion. They should have at least double that cash. What the hell? Yeah, so that's okay. So let's talk about that. Let's get deeper into Coinbase, okay? And again, if you guys need me to explain this stuff, go over, just ask questions now. We got about a half hour, okay, about this. D-Rise says Kraken is laying off people too. They could be in the same boat. Okay, do you guys want to talk about that and the layoffs? Let's get into that real quick. All right, hold on. All right, in your operating expenses, okay, you do have payroll in your operating expenses, okay? That's operational expenses, literally what you need to run on a daily basis. Your utilities, rent, costs like that, things that you have like in buckets where it's depreciated, you put your depreciated costs outside. This is your OPEX things. These we like to consider like our controllable daily operational expenses, where if we need to pull levers, these are the first levers we pull, and a lot of it has to do with staffing. So yeah, I mean, I'm with you on that. Coinbase, they laid off a bunch of people, but the problem is their operational expenses are 1.6 billion higher in the first 9 months of this year compared to last year. Now, you guys know this. The crypto winter has been going on real heavy for months and months and months, and their expenses are going through the roof. So it's shitty to see, because you could apply this to anyone out there. Robert Melvin says, hey, from Toronto, Canada. Hey, what's up, Robert? From South Carolina. That's me. I'm not Robert. But anyways, they got a whole bunch of other stats that you could go through here. You could do this with any public company, and you could go through a lot of stuff. Okay, so here's your cash flows. Here's your income and loss. First 9 months of last year, they made 2.7 billion. The first 9 months of this year, they lost 2 billion. Think of that flip. That is a $4.7 billion delta that this company effed up. $4.7 billion. So they went from foot on the gas pedal making money to just blowing it out their ass. $4.7 billion in 9 months. Would you invest in a company like that? So now what happens with wallets and stuff like that? Think about this. If they start going down, they sell every asset that they can. And if you think it's wrong, like seriously, look at what's happening with the whole FTX situation. You've got different countries taking funds out of FTX. You got Bahamas, you got Turkey, you've got the hacker who's still draining funds. You got a mysterious $1+ billion that's magically gone. Like, all this stuff is just a mess. So you have to know that these people are going to do whatever they can to get away with it, all right? Especially the ones that are running books where you have a $4.7 billion delta. There are people just totally just right there ready to screw them up. But anyways, that's what we got going on. We got Saudasi RI saying, hey, from Lithuania, how are you? Rostin Aguilar says, good morning, Klaus and everyone. Well, good morning to you. At 10 a.m. Eastern Standard Time is when you start seeing the stuff with the Senate Ag Committee with the CFTC chair head on the Hill. Anyways, the other things that we wanted to talk about too this morning, we could talk a little heat map. Don't forget we have CPI data, everyone. Yep, CPI data came in at 7.7. The next one comes out December 13th. Be ready from that one. Roston is from New Orleans. I've always wanted to go to New Orleans. It's a place I haven't been to, and it's only like 9 hours from my house, so it's really not too far. Says, Klaus and a breakfast, perfect match. Well, thank you. I appreciate that. Mep says, Coinbase stopped giving away free coins for the past month or so. I thought it was weird since they did it free for years. I feel like they looked in their books and realized it was better to keep them. Yeah, and I think that's the key. I think Coinbase, here's the deal, because everyone's asking about Coinbase Wallet. If it does not make financial sense for them, they're going to get rid of it. If it's a loss of income, they're going to get rid of it. That's just business. They will then say, hey, you've got X number of months, maybe say 3 months to do it. The Coinbase article that I did, right, the video that I did, the one that had, give me a second here, the one that has XRP, XLM delisted, that actually has the instructions on there to move your funds off of the wallet into something else. So if that's something that you're worried about, that is listed in there. Nathan says, how does Executive Order 14067 affect exchanges? We have to see the rollout of it. Honestly, we have to see the rollout of it. The other thing, too, is you got to remember, there's not a lot of exchanges based in the United States. So the executive order only affects things in the United States. Guys, there's not many. That's why most of these exchanges are like out in the Eastern Rim. Yeah, a little bit different regs out there, ladies and gents. Let's see. We got, whenever a company stops giving away freebies, it's time to leave. Yeah, I'm with you on that. It's a cost thing, and that's the thing. So seriously, like, remove the idea of wallet, okay? Let's just seriously remove the idea of wallet, and let's just talk about a service that a company makes. Would you keep stock of a product on your shelf that cost you money instead of made you money? No, you wouldn't, because if it's not making, it's not worth it, right? So you have to look at this. If their wallet and like custodial services, right, aren't doing anything for them, and all they're paying for is like server maintenance, IT help, and it's just draining a few 300, 400, 500, who knows how much, hundreds, thousands, or millions it takes. But if that's what's coming out of that, then yeah, they're going to be like, dude, we got to kill it, because their books are screwed, man. I mean, their books are screwed. Here's an idea revenue-wise, all right? Quarter 3 of 2021, they did $1.3 billion in revenue. The same quarter this year, quarter 3 of 2022, $590 million. So they're down, like 60%? It's crazy, guys. Come on. Like, this is what you're seeing out there. You're seeing companies, these exchanges here, just completely wrecked. And this is Coinbase, by the way. This is Coinbase's P&L statement. Sniff says, Coinbase card was giving back 4% XLM for the longest. I was paying my rent with that card. Yeah, and that's the whole thing. So when they start dialing back stuff, only giving away 1%, they're giving away 1% because they're realizing how much they're losing by giving away all the free shit. Twitch chimes in, probably with the smartest comment so far of the morning, so thank you, Twitch. This is me personally. I'm just putting what I have left in a cold wallet and letting it sit there until the end of 2025-ish. Cash flowing into the market is going to be key, okay? Look at the P&L of Coinbase, right? Their revenues are down. They're burning cash. This is something across the whole crypto market. On the retail end, the speculative end, the venture capitalist end is heavily pulling money out. A crazy amount. Sorry, I'm just trying to get food in. So venture capital is way down, right? Institutional level money, like outside the United States, isn't touching it because it's just too risky right now. So yeah, it's going to take a while for cash to start flowing in. That guy says morning to you. And at 10 a.m. Eastern time, we are going to have the Senate Ag Committee. We will go to that live. Until then, we've got the heat map right now up on the screen. We're sitting at 17,081 for a bit. ETH, 1276. XRP hit that 40 cents. Couldn't hold it. This is one I'm watching here real closely, is this 40-cent floor ceiling play for XRP. And for XLM, the same play that you're looking for is the floor ceiling of 9 cents. Those are my two kind of high-level things that I'm looking for. If you see it trading close to that, you're just waiting for a breakout. Don't waste your time. Michael O2 says, hey, Klaus, how's that new grandson? Jesus, how's that brand new grandson come along? Dude, it was awesome. I got to spend over a week with my kids out in South Dakota seeing my new grandson. It was so much fun. I loved it. The kids are actually going to be coming out here to visit us for the Christmas holidays. So we're excited because that means I get to see the little guy and my two girls coming out here in I think 3 weeks. 2 or 3 weeks they're going to come out. So I'm super excited. Sniff's got a comment, and Sniff, I got your back, buddy. Sniff says, the more I stick around in crypto, the more I realize that Bitcoin will always be number one. He's got a real valid point here. And the reason Sniff has a valid point is Bitcoin is super decentralized. Who creates new blocks? Well, it depends on the miner, right? Whoever, mines whatever that equation is at that time. So that's a very decentralized disbursement of coins. It's not like someone can go out there and give 300,000 Bitcoin that they don't own to someone. It just doesn't work that way. It has to be mined, and there you go. Where you could see, an XLM and XRP, Stellar Development Foundation can give 2 billion lumens to someone. Like, they can do that. Same thing with Ripple Labs. They can give XRP to people. They gave it to Jed McCaleb. Prove me wrong on that one, right? So they can disperse the funds. Bitcoin, you can't. Bitcoin also is an entire ecosystem. It's the miners that generate it. So it's like digital gold, right? It's the miners that generate it. The problem right now at that end is they're not making money on the miner level. I was crunching out some calculations, and even with like ant mining rigs, each unit was only making like a few cents a day where I live, using the energy costs where I live. So, I mean, who's going to run an ant miner for a few cents of profit a day? That just is not worth it. So, yeah, until the price of Bitcoin goes up, mining is going to be rough, but it's an ecosystem. It's a decentralized ecosystem. They can't go after Bitcoin because who do you go after? If you want to go after XLM, it's easy. You could pick that organization, right? If you want to go after XRP, well, that's obvious who you go after. Ask the SEC. So, yeah, I'm Sniff. I'm with you on this. I get it. I understand why Bitcoin will be the big one. So when the people out there that are like, hey, Bitcoin is going to do a zero, hey, I don't see it. It's an ecosystem. It's not a profitable ecosystem, just like with oil drilling, okay? Like with oil. When the price of oil got to like $40 a barrel, like 70-80% of oil people out there shut off their production because they were losing money because it cost more than 40 a barrel to make. All right, that's all of a sudden when we were going into contango and all that stuff about 2 years ago. So you got to see, so that's the oil industry. Now it's like $70 a barrel, 80, right? We got up to 120 this summer. So all of a sudden, as the price goes up, more people can turn on their gear. It's the same thing as Bitcoin mining. As the price goes up, right, it's more profitable to do it. Your energy costs aren't as bad. You can make more money on it. So Randy Marsh says, what are your thoughts on Bitcoin Ethereum price this December coming in a new year? Look for more pain. But there is no reason for the crypto market to get better right now. FTX fallout is still happening. Okay, what I showed you guys with Coinbase, apply that to anyone out there. Anyone out there. What about Qcoin? Hold up. Let's do that. Let's go Qcoin 300% APY, right? 300% APY. Where was that? I did a story on it. Here's the whole deal. Hold on. Let me show you guys this. Because this wasn't too heavy of an algorithm pushed video. But Qcoin did some crazy stuff. 300% yield on stuff. 200% on some products. I think like Ethereum was like 200%. USDT was 100% APY. So you've got some red flags out there. So what you're seeing with Qcoin, the same thing is actually happening with Coinbase, Qcoin. All of their P&Ls all look the same. Let's see. And D-Rise says, even if miners go offline, the nodes will stay up and facilitate transactions. Yeah, and that's the whole, so it facilitates transactions, but the actual creation of new, like the yield of new is just not there. And that's what they're talking about with centralization. The person that makes money, the entity that makes money, is it centralized, right? I mean, that's obvious. I mean, hey, people use, Lumens, right, to keep the lights on. Lumens is worth more. It benefits them. So you have to kind of look at it that way. Sorry, I'm just sneaking in a quick snack. Let's see, what else we got going on? We've got, hold on, sorry, I'm just looking at notes real quick. We got 20 minutes till the CFTC comes on. But Qcoin is one. Qcoin came out. They came out with 100%, 200, and 300% yield. I want to explain that to everyone right now that's watching this live stream what that means, okay? There is no magic pill in crypto. All right, there is not. There is no magic pill in crypto. There is no secret sauce of how these people here are able, okay, to do so much more. Ooh, hey there. Sorry, I'm just changing up my video device here. Hold on, everyone. All right, but anyways, I'll leave it here. But here's the whole thing. There is no magic pill out there. There is no company out there that can offer more than 7, 8, 9% without red flags all to hell being raised right now. There is no freaking way. In any company right now that is increasing their yield is one of the biggest red flags out there. Because how can companies now increase their yield to you when the whole market, okay, let's look at the 1 day, but let's be smart about this, when the whole market is red. Red. So companies out there that are offering higher yield now are doing that to lure in new money to pay old debts. What does that sound like? Yeah, that's Ponzi. That's bad. They're not a business model that works. They're just trying to last as long as they can. That's why like all these house of cards companies keep falling. That's the big problem that we're having right now in crypto. It's this greed of the entire industry. So any exchange, centralized, decentralized, does not matter what it is. Because guess what? If KuCoin is in trouble, if Coinbase is in trouble, and we showed it on the P&Ls, you can do this for any company out there. If they're offering higher yields during a red market, that is the biggest oh shit red flag in the world. Twitch Radio chimes in, no magic pill. Evidently you never heard of Voyager. Maybe we should start giving it to all these people over the exchanges. Yeah, no kidding. And that's a good one. Good joke. That made me laugh, man. But think about that. Any company giving more yield, right? Higher yields. What is the national average right now? Anyone want to take a guess? The national average for the highest yield accounts right now are between 3 to 3.5%. How are crypto companies offering double? They still have to pay for infrastructure. They still have to pay for staff. They still have to pay for maintenance. They still have to keep the lights on. How is that possible? How are these companies offering 100% yield on a stable coin? It's because they need heavy cash influx ASAP. They need it ASAP. So they're trying to lure in new money, people getting greedy to try to prop them up as long as they can. No one can offer that right now. And Colin Gentle, I'm glad you said that, all right? Colin Gentle says criminal. Trying to get new money in, it won't happen. We need to lose most of these coins. We do. That's the big problem. I'm super bullish on crypto, everyone. I seriously am. But when you see an industry that you love, and I've been covering this for how long now? A couple years? So like for me, I've dedicated a lot of time to this space. All right, a lot of time in my life I've been dedicating this only to see these greedy, speculative losers come in and ruin it. These people that think they're all kind of wunderkinds and stuff like that. I've met all these people. They're all freaking losers. They're all losers. They all think they can outsmart everyone. But the problem is business comes down to one simple fact. Supply and demand. That always wins, and that's why these idiots always lose, because they think their algorithmic stable coins can beat supply and demand. No, they're just targets. They're going to be targets that are people that are smarter than them, that are better at hackers, better exploiters, better coders, to just snatch that money from them. That's what crypto has become right now, and that bothers me. All right, sorry about that. That one guy says in PNC, which is a bank, by the way, for everyone who's not a U.S.-based customer. In PNC, and we offer 3%. Yeah, so these companies offering 20, 50, and 100% are sure going to burn down imminently. And it's true. It's totally true. The Nexo, guys, I know I have a lot of fans of Nexo out there. How is Nexo? Yeah, let's do that. Let's look at Nexo yields, okay? And this is why I know I get in trouble with stuff, okay? So just be nice. Where's Nexo? Nexo. Hold on, guys. Let me get Nexo. Give me a second. Whoa. You guys like that? All right, here we go. So now I got Nexo up. Let's just look at some of their products, all right? Let's earn some interest. Yep, 15%. Now, granted, you got to do some things. You got to buy their native token. Shut up. Shut up, dude. That's what FTX did. Shut up. BNB is the same thing, an internalized token to help them derive more profit when you didn't need one. You didn't need to create a BNB token. And you didn't need to be the centralized issuer of it. So they're giving 15%, dude. That's crazy. I mean, and look, borrow and buy up to 3 times more crypto. Are you crazy? Up to 3 times leverage? Let's give 3 times leverage right now in this? Dude, this is a mess, everyone. And if people out there cannot see that we do have to flush these bad actors out, then you're living in the clouds too. And I hope this channel is giving everyone a sense of reality here. All right, trust me, I am bullish, all right, on crypto Web3. Totally bullish on it. But speculators destroy it. Speculators, right, screwed up the oil market, what was it, like 15, 14 years ago? Remember when they blew oil prices up? Yeah, speculators did that. The same speculators that are wiping out crypto. MEPS's Nexo is as bad as BlockFi, Celsius, or any other yield platform. And it's true. Think of all the programs out there that are offering yield. They just can't sustain it. How are they doing it? How is KuCoin giving 100% yield on a stable coin? Dude, you gotta be kidding me. Nexo, 15%. Guys, banks in the United States are struggling with a 3.5% yield on average. We're not there yet. We're less than 3.5 as an average yield. So how are these crypto banks, exchanges, institutions, whatever the f you want to call them, how are they offering 5 times more? How? There's no way it's sustainable. Where are they making up the extra 12% to go from 3% to 15%? Where are they making it up? Risky gambling with your money. And you can't tell me I'm wrong, because where would they get the money from? The whole market's freaking red. The whole market is red. So yes, when you see me do these negative stories, I'm so sorry that it sucks. I do. I hate it. I have to be real with everyone, and we have to flush the bad actors out by exposing them, and this is how you do it. Name and protocol. Come on, do it in the comments. Do it in the comments. We got 12 minutes. We got 12 minutes until the hearing starts. Put it in the comments. Who do you want to, who are some of those high yield people there you want to expose? Because this is how you're going to get crypto better, by getting these stupid ass business plans that are just drowning people. I mean, think about it, because what happens like this, okay? KuCoin. All right, here's the problem with KuCoin. Who needs 100% yield right now? Someone that's super desperate for cash. When you're super desperate for cash, what are you not? You're not thinking level-headed. You're thinking emotionally, not analytically. So they're preying on people, okay, that with using their emotions instead of logic, people that are vulnerable, people that need money. Loan sharks, it's the same idea. Why do you go to a loan shark? You're desperate and you need cash fast. What do you think 100% APY looks like on a stable coin? You need cash fast. Damn. Ironic says Elmo Musk for one. You know? Yeah, I mean, and look what happened with Tesla. Tesla was used, and it was an inflated product. A share. I'm talking about their shares, right? Were used as leverage on things. That's bad. It wasn't cash backing up. That was the problem. A lot of these people's wealth, a lot of wealth that you saw was in inflated assets. All right? Really, really bad mess. Robert Melvin said something really good. All we want is the truth and a level playing field. And that's what we wanted out of crypto, for the people, right? The problem is it's not for the people until we get these losers out of here. Robert Melvin also says, I don't trust CZ at all. I don't either. CZ is super smart, but he falls prey to the same idea. It's all going to be supply and demand. So Coinbase, hey, look, we know it. Crypto market's down. Coinbase is down. All these exchanges are down. I bought Charlie Lee's bags. I like that, by the way. It says, facts. Winners today are physical gold and silver. Real coins in your hands will always beat out digits on a computer. And it's true. Now, that doesn't mean that crypto, Web3, and all this stuff is useless. No. Well, you have to find the real use case for it. The speculative, this kind of crap is not it. This crap right here is a cash grab before laws are made. All right? That's why this is existing right now. That's why crypto is just jacked up right now, is because these people are taking advantage of a lack of laws out there. Let's see. Twitch Radio says, speaking of banks, has anyone seen anything weird with Wells Fargo lately? I've just had, I have just kind of concerning. I haven't seen anything with Wells Fargo. Remember, the nice thing with Wells Fargo is your funds are FDIC insured. That process, though, can take up to 10 years. So just kind of keep that in mind, all right? That can take up to 10 years to get FDIC reimbursed. So anyways, we've got about 9 minutes until the CFTC gets a little talking to by the Senate Ag Committee. Did you like that? That was actually pretty legit. Yeah, that's not showing up just yet. Let's look at the heat map and let's switch this back to 1 day to see what's going on. So back in 1 day, we got Bitcoin 17.11, ETH 12, 7 XRP fighting that 40-cent ceiling right there, 39.999. We got XLM is going to be fighting the 9-cent ceiling, sitting at 8.8. All right. What else do you guys want to talk about? Well, we've got 8 minutes until the CFTC comes on, because I'm telling you right now, exchanges out there that are offering 15% yield, 8% yield, it's crazy. The national average is not even 3.5%. So companies that are offering more have all fallen. What did Celsius offer everyone? 20%. Oh, wait a minute. When Do Kwon and Luna UST went down, I actually have a tweet saved. Because I knew they were going to delete it. And you know what the tweet was? They changed their yield from 20 to 40% so they could raise emergency funding. You guys know that money's gone. The people that put their money in at 40%, that money's gone. Right? It crashed. They burned through how many billions and billions worth of Bitcoin to try to prop up UST as they depeg that nasty thing? Yeah. So when it comes to people out there offering high yields, be very, very careful. Oh, baby, I like it. Ross says, new God of War. Gotta play it. I have been hitting hard on Tarkov, actually. They just had an update on Tarkov, so I've been playing a lot of that lately. But I have seen a little God of War action out there. Been watching a little bit of Charlie White, just throwing it out there, gents. Andy says, I don't get the Coinbase stuff. Are they only talking about their wallet or removing XRP XLM from the exchange platform completely? This is just for the wallet. And that's what has everyone really concerned right now, is because what are the fees to manage those in the wallet? Why is Coinbase doing this? Is it that much of a savings for them just to delist it in wallet custodial services when they're burning a hole as what? What did we say? 2.7 billion? No, 4.7 billion was their delta? Yeah. So, and that's a 9-month delta, by the way. Whoo, that's nasty. That is nasty. Oh, Rise just said, nice, Tarkov waiting for streets. Tell me about it. I know. Been playing since 2017. I've been playing since, I've been playing, 2019? 2019? Yeah, maybe May 2019, something like that. So I've been playing for a while. I'm getting decent. I'm not the best, but I'm getting decent. Three Blind Mice says, what's up, Jim Master K? From friggin' Minnesota. Good stuff this morning. You're definitely my home buddy. We're at Minnesota. I used to spend a lot of time up there. A lot of fishing time and a lot of corporate time I spent up in Minnesota. Oh, baby, I like it. Ross says, my car is in the shop for another day. I'm landlocked. More Kratos it is. Speaking of cars, did you guys all see the pimp ride that I bought? I did. I legit bought a pimp ride. So, Edward NM says, any thoughts on Nexo? Nexo's in trouble. Seriously, someone tell me out there. Someone convince me, okay? Someone convince me how Nexo, all right, is giving away 15%. How? How are they able to give a 15% yield on something where the national average is not even at 3.5%? How did they figure it out to get that so much better? Like, that's crazy. That's totally crazy. So yeah, Nexo I think is in deep trouble. I mean, that's just my thing. It's just Mike in Clown World says XRP will become a stablecoin and will be a stablecoin and will be its own thing. If you sell XRP for fiat, you're selling for a weaker asset. So I've heard. I think the thing is we got to be realistic of the expectations of XRP. We got to be realistic of the expectations of XLM. The amount of money that's been taken out of crypto, like cash taken out of crypto is huge. Huge taken out. You need the next cash influx to happen. It's honestly going to take time for money to rotate. because it's just, there's other ways to make money out there that are less risky for big whales, right? Big whales can still buy real estate real cheap. They can buy businesses real cheap. There's a lot of that stuff that they can do that's going to be way, way cheaper for them, and where they can earn more money too, safely, right? Assets that they can have insured, and you're not seeing that with crypto. You don't have that. Let's see, we got 4 more minutes until the Senate Ag Committee comes up. Let's do this. I'm going to open up one more window here. Give me a second. All right, so we got it up on this one right here, Senate Ag Committee. I'm going to open up one more just in case. We're going to go with a little bit of risky business. Give me what? Okay, hold on one second here. Let's go Senate Ag Committee. Here we go. Senate Ag Committee. Let's see if we can find one. If not, we'll just use their native one. I'm just opening up redundant windows, but we're good. We've got 2 of them going. Yeah, we've got 3 minutes until the Senate Ag Committee starts their thing. So let's put that up on here. Dun, 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 dun. All right, when this fires up, I will mute my mic, and then what you guys got to do is let me know in the comments below how their sound feed is in this. We'll go full screen as well. I'll kill my image, and we'll be awesome. Mep says, at the moment, if your coins are not in a hard wallet, you risk of losing all your coins, and nobody's going to cry for you. Yeah, by now, if you're not more protected, right? By now, if you're not wearing the Jimmy hat on your crypto, you're just asking to get taxed. That's just the nature of the beast, everyone. Totally the nature of the beast. So yeah, we've got 3 minutes, everyone, until we start seeing what's happening with Congress. Give me a second here. Display capture card video capture device here. Let's do this. Whoa, why do I keep grabbing the wrong one? Just video capture. I get that. I'm trying to change it. Why is this not? This is so annoying. I can't. I'm having issues with my video capture device wanting to do this, and I think, oh, I see why. Duh, I locked it. I'm so fucking stupid. All right, real quick here. Just wanted to show everyone. So, you know, speaking of G-Rod, check this thing out, dude. I picked this up. I don't know if you guys can see it that well. But anyways, that's the odometer, 37,000 original miles. And I've been working on this thing quite extensively. Pretty cool car here. Totally detailing and refinishing this 1987. Look at that. Oh, yeah. Look at the G-Ride. That's right, ladies. A 1987 Chrysler Fifth Avenue with 37,000 original miles. So I just want to make sure that we get the Senate hearing here. We're going to fire this one up. We're going to go to the heat map. Sorry, I'm just getting things set up here so we could do this. Eric Cortez says, good morning, bro. Good morning to you, Eric. And good morning to everyone out there, because in about 1 minute or so, we are going to have the Ag Committee, and what they're going to be talking to is the CFTC. We will go live to that. We'll blow it out full screen. Oh, look at this. We're getting it ready. We're getting it ready. Sorry, I'm just waiting. I'm getting antsy here because I want to see what they say. They're the first ones right now in DC that are going to be wanting answers for crypto. And yes, that red interior is nice. It's got the plushiest red fur carpet and like just the best like velvet seats. I've got new headliner coming. I've got faux suede headliner coming so I can do my headliner and my pillars. Let's see. That one guy, says, you think they're going to give eye contact to Gensler as they stroke his ego, or just cup the softball questions you can get? Gensler's not going to be on this one. This is going to be the CFTC, all right? That's who's going to be on that. Robert Melvin says, no, it's Pimp. You need to pay Pimpin' Peter on the hood. I do. I got to get a Pimpin' Peter logo for it, actually. But no, it's a legit ride that I'm restoring. I'm actually thinking, and let me know what you guys think. I'm actually thinking of auctioning that car off and actually doing like a whole video series about it. Just for fun. Not for crypto, but on my other channel, just for fun. And actually like see if there's enough interest. I think I would auction it maybe on like Bring a Trailer or something like that and see whoever buys it, do a video. I mean, I just think it'd be kind of fun to show people like what you could do with the car, because at the end I'll be able to reveal actually how much I bought the car for and like what I would be selling it for. I would reveal it to everyone, all the deets, and how much money it was to, to fix it up, and what do I get for it. So like I said, we're just waiting for the Senate Ag Committee to talk to the CFTC. Let's see what we got here. Sorry, I'm just waiting for their feed to kick in. I haven't seen anything yet. Give me a second here. I just want to make sure that we're not missing anything. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. Dun, dun, dun. And when it goes live, just let me know how the sound is. They should be going up any moment now. But yeah, crypto car show. No, but it's legit. That's kind of one of the thing. I bought Charlie Lee's bag. Says sweet ride. Yeah, it's a legit ride, man. Like the thing is super cool. Oh, let me change my camera here real quick. I will move that out. Let's do this.
Committee to
order. Get rid of me.
Appreciate Chairman Benham being with us this morning. 1 month ago, the crypto market was rocked by reports that Alameda Research, a trading firm affiliated with crypto exchange FTX, was in financial trouble. Alameda's balance sheet was propped up by a crypto token that FTX had created. In a matter of days, FTX and most of its affiliated companies collapsed into bankruptcy. At best, these events uncovered an alarming lack of internal controls and egregious governance failures. At worst, Sam Bankman-Fried and his inner circle lied to and stole from over 1 million customers, some of whom have lost their life savings. Meanwhile, the fallout continues across the crypto ecosystem. For over a year, this committee has been examining the risks posed by the lack of federal oversight of the crypto industry. The chairman of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission with us today, Russ Benham, spoke about this issue at his confirmation hearing. At that hearing, Mr. Benham discussed the agency's enforcement actions against crypto firms, but warned us that they were just the tip of the iceberg. Since that time, members of this committee have been working on a bipartisan basis to advance legislation that would give the CFTC regulatory authority over the trading of crypto tokens that are not securities. To be clear, there currently is no federal market regulation of spot crypto assets that are not securities. These include Bitcoin and Ether, the two most heavily traded crypto assets. The White House and the Financial Stability Oversight Council have urged Congress to close this gap. The Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act does exactly that, and I want to thank Senator Boozman as my partner, and I want to thank our co-sponsors as well. I've said this before, and I'll say it again. The Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act does not take authority away from other financial regulators, nor does it make the CFTC the primary crypto regulator. Because crypto assets can be used in many different ways, no single financial regulator has the expertise or the authority to regulate the entire industry. We continue to work with our colleagues on the Senate Banking Committee and at the Securities and Exchange Commission and other financial regulators to bring greater protections to this market, regardless of whether the asset is a security or a commodity. The crisis created by FTX further confirms the need for a whole-of-government approach to regulating this market. The risks of trading crypto have come into sharp focus in the past few weeks, but we have known about them for years. The lack of clear, consistent rules has allowed crypto to flourish despite the harmful conflicts of interest and absence of responsible governance and risk management, and a failure to safeguard customer assets. This is the very conduct our legislation is designed to prevent. And where federal regulators, including the SEC, already have authority to register and oversee crypto firms, they must use that authority. Fraud prosecutions are a critical tool, but far too few and far too often they are brought after customers' money has been lost, with little recourse for those affected. Senator Boozman and I have called today's hearing to do two things. First, to understand what went wrong at FTX, We won't have all the answers today because the story is just beginning to unfold. But the committee will hear from Chairman Benham about what may have triggered such a staggering collapse in such a short period of time. Second, we want to ensure that the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act sufficiently addresses these risks. One thing is already apparent. The crypto industry lacks the customer protections that Americans expect and deserve when trading in U.S. markets. When exchanges accept customer funds for trading, they must not be allowed to gamble with those funds. They must not be allowed to invent products that have little or no intrinsic value and accept them as collateral for loans. And they must not be allowed to self-deal.
She's talking about FTT
FTX
token,
did all
BNB,
of
stuff
those
like that
things,
that these internalized
emboldened
exchange
by a
they use.
lack of federal oversight. And let me just conclude by saying that there is one exception in this story. One exception is Ledger X, a derivatives exchange and clearinghouse purchased by FTX and registered with the CFTC. John Ray, the CEO appointed to navigate the FTX companies through bankruptcy, said that Ledger X has a, quote, solvent balance sheet and responsible management. Customer money was safeguarded and is accounted for. The DCCPA replicates these commodity markets in law and Congress must add to the traditional roles in our regular continue to be harmed, and hardworking Americans will continue to lose billions of dollars at the hands of bad actors like FTX. To my colleague and Senator Bozeman.
Well, Madam Chair, and for calling today's very, very important hearing. The sudden bankruptcy of FTX, a Bahamas-based cryptocurrency exchange that at its peak was the world's third largest crypto exchange by volume, has been truly shocking. Public reports suggest a complete lack of risk management, conflicts of interest, and misuse of funds. There is simply no place for such behavior, especially in our financial markets. A failure of this magnitude requires Congress to analyze a number of things. What happened? The scope and scale of the impact to U.S. consumers and investors. What could have prevented this? And what the potential market effects are or systemic risk were. This hearing will allow the public to learn what happened from the perspective of the CFTC, a frontline regulator, the agency's response, and the tools the agency needs to protect U.S. customers and investors in the future. Many have asked, why is the Ag Committee involved in this? The Ag Committee is involved because this committee and no other committee in the Senate is responsible for the oversight of the nation's commodity markets. Bitcoin, although a cryptocurrency, is a commodity. It's a commodity in the eyes of the federal courts and the opinion of the SEC chairman. There's no dispute about this. If there are exchanges where commodities are traded, be it wheat, oil, or Bitcoin, then they must be regulated. It's simply that simple. The choice not to regulate leaves consumers at the mercy of those who would prey upon them. The FTX failure is an unacceptable reoccurrence. A foreign entity fails and U.S. consumers and businesses get hurt as a result. The choice not to regulate or opting for a regulation by enforcement approach drives entities offshores and out of the U.S. regulators' purview. When these offshore entities fail, U.S. consumers still get hurt. but U.S. regulators can only watch from afar. The CFTC is the right agency to regulate digital commodities. When given the necessary authorities, the CFTC has consistently demonstrated its willingness to protect consumers via enforcement actions against bad actors. It also has a pragmatic, principles-based agency approach that enhances consumer protection by building and implementing constructive, workable regulatory structures for markets to function in. There is no better example of this than the CFTC's regulation of the futures market, which has proven to be one of the most resilient markets, in large part because of the CFTC's tried and trusted principles-based regulatory regime. The CFTC regulates markets through core principles that prevent conflicts of interest, prohibits abusive trade practices, protects customer funds, and informs investors about market risk. Chairman Stabenow and I have drawn from these consumer protection-based principles and the agency's expertise in regulating evolving and complex markets and applied them to digital commodity spot markets. I welcome today's hearings to explore how the CFTC would have used the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act in this situation and to flesh out what regulatory gaps we need to fill to prevent such occurrences from happening again. Long before the FTX's collapse, the chairwoman and I began drafting legislation to address the need for regulation in digital commodity spot markets. Speaking for myself, I can tell you that between my staff and I, we've had a transparent process taking at least 240 meetings this year with a wide variety of stakeholders that informed the legislation that was introduced in August and continues to inform my thinking as Chairwoman Stabenow and I refine the DCCPA. A lot of hard work has gone into the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act. It is a result of a bipartisan coordination and widespread stakeholder engagement encompassing nearly the entire digital asset and financial services ecosystem. It also incorporates consumer advocacy and academic input and regulatory technical assistance. The bill is a good faith effort to establish a constructive regulatory framework that provides the CFTC with the resources and the authority necessary to protect consumers and retail investors while promoting industry innovation in digital commodity spot or cash markets. I'm confident that CFTC is the right agency for an expanded regulatory role in the digital commodity spot market, and I remain committed to advancing a final version of the bill that will allow for the creation of safeguards the market desperately needs. And certainly even more so in the wake of the CFTC collapse. I look forward to Chairman Benham weighing in on the events of the FTX collapse, giving the perspective on the state of the industry, the role the CFTC is playing in protecting U.S. consumers, and ensuring efficient derivatives markets. I welcome his insight on the bill. And with that, I yield back.
Thank you so much, Senator Boozman. Russ Benham is chairman of the Commodities Futures Trading Commission, well known to the committee. We welcome you today, and we appreciate hearing from you on this really important topic. Please proceed.
Thank you, Chairwoman Stabenow, Ranking Member Boozman, and members of the committee for the opportunity to appear before you today. The events of the past few weeks embody in the most regrettable way the perilous state of the digital asset market. For years, many have recognized that a patchwork of federal and state-based regulation is an unsuitable substitute for a comprehensive approach. We are here today because many Americans invested in a novel product and will likely lose money because digital asset markets lack the basic protections that we have all come to expect and have made American financial markets the envy of the world. In the absence of stringent and uniform standards, the digital asset market rapidly expanded. With nominal barriers to entry for new products and new consumers, massive speculative interest has taken the place of legitimate market forces, putting the American public at significant risk. We are here today because the latest events involving FTX lay bare the consequences and demand accountability. As I have stated publicly many times before, I strongly believe that we need to move quickly on a thoughtful regulatory approach to establish guardrails in these fast-growing markets of evolving risk, or they will remain an unsafe venture for customers and could present a growing risk to the broader financial system. Failure to act will leave consumers who have made investments in digital commodities largely unprotected. Unlike other federal financial regulators, the CFTC lacks the necessary and direct authority to write rules and to oversee this marketplace. Instead, we may only reach it through more limited authority activated when fraud or manipulation has already occurred. While we can and do hold perpetrators accountable when we find fraud or manipulation, for the victims of the scheme, it's already too late. The CFTC does not have direct statutory authority to comprehensively regulate cash digital commodity markets. Instead, the Commission's jurisdiction resides with its more limited fraud and manipulation enforcement authority. In the absence of direct regulatory and surveillance authority in the underlying cash market, CFTC enforcement activity begins with a referral or whistleblower tip from an external source. Despite this limitation, the CFTC has brought more than 60 enforcement cases in the digital asset space since 2014, with total penalties of just over $820 million. Alone in fiscal year 2022, more than 20% of our total 82 enforcement actions involved digital assets. But as I have suggested over a year ago, the fraud that we are able to prosecute is likely a fraction of what exists in the shadows. Limited enforcement authority is no substitute for comprehensive regulation in which trading platforms, dealers, custodians, and other critical infrastructure participants are required to be registered and subject to direct oversight by a regulator such as the CFTC. By the time the CFTC is able to exercise its fraud and manipulation authority, it's already too late for defrauded customers. Identifying unique elements of the digital asset commodity markets that distinguish it from other cash markets, I have asked Congress directly for clear authority to impose our traditional regulatory regime over the digital asset commodity market. I have been greatly encouraged by the efforts from Congress to date. I have not been shy about my encouragement of bills that contemplate shared responsibility for the CFTC and the Securities Exchange Commission, where the SEC would utilize its existing authority and reporting regime requirements for all security tokens, while the CFTC would apply its market-based rules for the more limited subset of commodity tokens, which do not have the same characteristics of security tokens. In September, I appeared before you in support of the Digital Commodity Consumer Protection Act, which benefited from the expertise of CFTC staff, who worked closely with some members of this committee to establish a framework similar to the CFTC's current and effective regulatory framework over the derivatives markets. I have been encouraged by the bipartisan and bicameral support that recognizes the need for guardrails around the burgeoning digital asset economy and calls for regulation to impart transparency, accountability, stability, customer protections, and oversight across digital assets. In light of recent events, the CFTC stands ready to continue working with this committee and other members of Congress in revisiting existing proposals to ensure every known weakness, risk, and failure is addressed in legislation. It has been easy to fall into analysis paralysis, compelled to endlessly debate the utility of the underlying technology, how to ensure responsible innovation, and how flexible or restrictive regulation should be, both exclusively around digital assets and inclusively amongst traditional financial instruments. Our highest priorities must be the protection of customer property and promotion of fair, stable, and resilient markets. If we are going to ensure that FTX and other firms that are subjecting customers to billions of dollars in losses are appropriately regulated and held accountable, we need to act promptly to apply a comprehensive regulatory regime. Most of the coverage about FTX in the past weeks has focused on the over 130 different entities that filed for bankruptcy, which includes an offshore-based exchange for trading digital assets and digital asset-based derivatives, a highly leveraged market-making firm trading throughout the digital asset market, and a US-based spot exchange. Of significantly less focus is the entity registered with and overseen by the CFTC, a derivatives exchange and clearinghouse called LedgerX LLC. Since 2017, LedgerX has been registered with the CFTC as a designated contract market, swaps execution facility, and derivatives clearing organization. LedgerX is one of the few FTX entities to not file for bankruptcy. The CFTC has been in near daily contact with LedgerX, as well as the third-party custodians it uses to hold both cash and digital assets. Based on the information presented to us at this time, LedgerX customer property remains secure, and LedgerX has the financial resources to continue operating for the foreseeable future. We are continuing to closely monitor LedgerX, but the initial evidence suggests that in the collapse of the broader FTX universe, CFTC regulations are working to ensure that those registered with the CFTC are in a position to protect customers and continue market operations. The lesson here is clear. Thoughtful, comprehensive regulation works to protect customers and prevent the type of events that have befallen the other FTX entities. Invariably, the questions we are all obligated to answer as regulators are, how did you let this happen, and how will you prevent this from happening again? In the pivotal moment we find ourselves in, the answer to both questions is comprehensive market regulation. At the CFTC, we lack the authority to comprehensively regulate the digital commodity market and to prevent this from happening again. We must be provided appropriate authority by Congress. And without new authority for the CFTC, there will remain gaps in a federal regulatory framework, even if other regulators act within their existing authority. In fact, the recent Financial Stability Oversight Council report concludes that, quote, a regulatory gap exists in spot markets for crypto assets that are commodities and not securities. The CFTC will remain vigilant with respect to our registered entities, use our existing fraud and manipulation authority to the fullest extent of the law, and engage with this committee to ensure you have as much information as needed. I look forward to answering your questions, and thank you for the invitation today.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And we will have 7-minute rounds because of the importance of this issue and having our one witness today. Chairman, you testified that CFTC has a limited window into FTX operation, apart from the one entity that you talked about, LedgerX, which is registered with the CFTC. Based on the visibility that you have into LedgerX and the information that you learned from discussions with other regulators or FTX, what can you tell us about the cause of the FTX collapse?
Thank you, Senator, for the question. I'd say at the beginning very clearly, the LedgerX relationship was essentially walled off from other affiliates and other entities in the FTX family. So we had a lens into FTX, and as I've stated and as you've recognized, the entity is healthy, it's solvent, it's operational, and we know where customer money is. But the limitations of our authority stopped at that entity. And the sort of reciprocal relationship is, for those same reasons that we were walled off from going past the regulated entity, the other FTX entities were not able to pierce through LedgerX and potentially take customer money, which obviously as a regulator, that is the priority. In terms of what happened and what we're learning, obviously a lot of information continues to come in. But as we look at what we've learned thus far, it seems like a classic liquidity crunch that really forced a run on the institution. Over a series of days, there were concerns about the health of the FTX entity and all of the affiliates. And at that point, as we've learned, a number of the customers and investors started to withdraw their funds, which really cascaded into a massive withdrawal of funds, which at some point, FTX had to stop those withdrawals and then ultimately file for bankruptcy. A lot of indications about commingling and not using custody to protect customer property, and a series of conflicts of interest, which you also pointed out. So these are the things that we've learned so far, but continue to monitor the situation. But ultimately, it looks like a classic run based on a liquidity crunch.
Holy shit, I just had to pause it right there as, yep, guess what? Rostin Benham, we know, is now running defense for Sam Bankman-Fried, saying that this was a bank run. Are you effing kidding me? This guy is disgusting.
Thank you. FTX had requested that CFTC amend LedgerX's clearinghouse license, and the agency was reviewing that proposal at the time of their bankruptcy. Could you please describe for the committee the agency's interactions with FTX and its former CEO regarding this request, as well as the status of the request before it was withdrawn?
Thanks, Senator. I'll try to be as concise and comprehensive as possible. It's a important question. We had, and FTX was dogged in their pursuit of getting an approval for this application for the clearinghouse. But certainly, as I can't speak to the number of meetings necessarily that Mr. Bankman-Fried and his team had with staff. I do know they were in the building quite a bit, talking with staff about the details of the application. I can, though, share with this committee with respect to me, my team and I have taken an initial review of my calendar, and what we've observed is that my team and I met with Mr. Bankman-Fried and his team. Over the past 14 months, we met 10 times in the CFTC office at their request, all in relation to this DCO, this clearinghouse application. 9 out of the 10 times we were in Washington, 1 was at a widely held conference in Florida earlier this year. In addition, there were 2 phone calls, I believe, and a number of messages, all in relation to the DCO application, providing us updates, suggesting that they were answering questions from different divisions, and trying, as I said, to doggedly move the application along and to get it approved. I would say it's really important to understand that by law, by statute, we needed to address and respond to the application. We did not have flexibility to put it on the side of the desk or disregard it. We had to respond to it. And knowing the importance of the issue and the very strong feelings on both sides of the application, both in support and opposition, I made a decision very early to be as transparent as possible with the process. So in March of this year, we put out a request for information, a series of questions to the public, trying to get as much stakeholder input. We received 1,500 responses to that request for information. In May of this year, we had a public roundtable on non-intermediation, specifically on non-intermediation and not the FTX application, because this application was not the first of its kind, and I will tell this committee it's not going to be the last of its kind either. This will continue to be an issue for the CFTC. All that said, this application had the potential impact far beyond FTX itself. It had the potential impact across market structure, across derivatives markets, and potentially across all financial markets. And it was for that reason that I decided, me as chairman, to be personally engaged as much as possible. There were very, very strong feelings about this application, and I felt I needed to be engaged as the chairman of the agency. That meant directly with FTX and Mr. Bankman-Fried, but that meant with other CEOs of public interest groups, of clearinghouses, of exchanges, of academics and regulators as well. And in many respects, this is consistent with what I've done in the past, but it is also consistent with recognizing the importance of the issue. I want to be responsive to stakeholders, I want to be respectful to stakeholders, and I want to have an open door policy so that my team and I can learn as much as possible. With regard to the last question, and I know there's been a number of reporting lately about the status of the application and where it was. The application was applied or submitted in December of last year. As of the withdrawal date, which was, I believe, November 11th of this year, there was no decision. There were more questions than answered. There was no decision or recommendation from staff. There was no pressure from any outside sources. As I said, we were doing what we were obligated to do by law. We were being very careful and surgical in examining the issue and including as many people and stakeholders as possible to better inform our decision.
Thank you very much. And last question before turning to my colleagues. Would the conduct that led to FTX failure have been prohibited under the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act? If you could speak briefly.
Sure, Senator. Based on what we know thus far, a lot of the issues that have arisen and sort of come to light is significant conflicts of interest, significant allegations of commingling customer money and house money, lack of books and records, lack of corporate governance and risk controls, just to name a few. And these are, from our understanding and working with you on the DCCPA, core elements of the DCCPA. So I certainly think, given the events of the recent past, we should take a fresh look, but the DCCPA does address these issues and would have prohibited those actions from occurring at FTX.
Thank you. Senator Boozman.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for being with us to testify about what's happened, and so importantly about the potential for future bad things happening to consumers if Congress doesn't act and get some authority to both you and the SEC so we can prevent these things from happening in the future. While this is not my view, over the past week I've read multiple articles that suggest the CFTC is a soft-touch regulator. Do you have a response to that?
Senator, I just patently reject that suggestion. I think you and I have talked about this before. I've talked about this to this committee. Again, I think it's just a lack of insight into the CFTC and what we do. And I think if individuals took a harder look at our record, both from a regulatory perspective and an enforcement perspective, they would understand that we're the farthest thing from a light touch regulator. We're one of the strongest, most respected regulators in the world, especially around derivatives markets. I think, I've been thinking about this a lot given the narrative that's been building. And my response comes with a few thoughts about what we do and what we've done historically. First, as we've discussed, let's think about LedgerX and the entity that we regulate. Of all the 130 entities in the FTX family, the few that survived, one is the CFTC regulated entity. Solvent, operational, and customer money is where it's supposed to be. I'd also point to our enforcement record. Since the last time I was with this committee, we closed out our fiscal year 2022 enforcement record. Over $2.5 billion in assessed penalties on a $320 million budget. And of those cases, 82 cases, 20% digital asset cases. And strong cases, precedential cases across all digital asset markets, including DeFi. These are not sham cases just looking for a headline. The third thing I'd say, and Senator, you sort of alluded to this in your opening statement, looking back to 2008 and the financial crisis, the tsunami that wiped the financial markets and the economy across the globe, the one area that was sort of a beacon of financial market regulation were cleared derivatives. Futures markets were able to know where customer money was and return customer money to its owners. That model essentially that regulatory framework served as a model for the swaps reform that this committee enacted in Dodd-Frank. And ongoing right now, there's a discussion about treasury market reform and clearing treasury markets. Cleared derivatives are the model for that market as well. So just a couple indications of the importance, the efficacy, and the strength of derivatives markets that are implemented and enforced by the CFTC.
Very good. I think you've answered this, but I think we need to be very, very clear about it. If FTX.com had been a registered U.S. exchange, would the CFTC have been able to mitigate what happened?
Senator, with our current authority, the answer is no. We need the authority to get into a CFTC registered exchange. As you point out, if we have that authority and they were registered, given what we know from the facts about conflicts of interest, commingling funds, books and records, we would have been able to prohibit it. And I would point to what we're doing with LedgerX. On a daily basis, our staff is in direct communication, not only with LedgerX, but the custodians themselves, able to identify customer property and customer money. Imagine that scenario with FTX US. If we had a daily lens into the location of customer money and customer property, you can imagine, given what we've learned about what's happened with FTX, we could have certainly prohibited many of the actions that we're hearing about.
Do you agree that the FTX collapse shows the need to, number one, bring entities into the U.S. to enable regulatory oversight into them, and number two, create a framework focused on regulating custodians' exchanges, and scrutinizing conflicts of interest relating to common ownership and control of exchanges and on-venue trading firms?
Absolutely, Senator. I think naturally, if there was a regulatory framework in the U.S., you would see a number of entities perhaps migrate to the U.S. and register, and this would bring the transparency that is direly needed around all the issues you stated. These are core fundamentals of market regulation. These are core fundamentals of CFTC regulation, ensuring that there are no conflicts of interest and that an individual entity cannot wear, multiple hats offering different services to the same customer, making sure that money is not commingled between house and customers as well, and having books and records to examine, being able to audit financial statements, having disclosures for customers. These are core elements that have served U.S. markets, U.S. derivatives markets so well for decades. And as we continue to see this digital asset market exist and interest from retail speculative investors, we need to bring these principles into this market in order to protect customers. There are gaps in this regime, and we have to fill this gap in order to protect customer money.
Very good. I want to take a moment to focus on a specific DCCPA provision, the dealer definition. My concern is that if we require CFTC registration in the digital asset context for U.S. entities who do not trade with any retail counterparties and do not offer trading with margin, leverage, or custody, we set a precedent for future Congresses to call for these same requirements in traditional commodity markets, which would be wholly inappropriate. Even though the activity is the same, I'm also concerned with diluting the CFT's resources away from protecting retail participants by overreaching on who is required to register. Do you agree that the priority focus should be protecting retail from fraudulent leveraged selling practices similar to the way the CEA currently requires registration of retail foreign exchange dealers?
Senator, I think absolutely the priority should be retail customers and retail investors. I've said that many times, and given the risks and the knowledge gap and the education gap, the focus certainly should be on retail investors.
Good. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you for joining us, Chairman. As has been explained by my colleagues, at its peak, FTX was revealed to have been a shell game in which the company gambled with customer money through its hedge fund. The $8 billion hole in FTX's balance sheet not only raises questions about regulatory oversight and transparency, but also about market structure and how centralized and interconnected much of the digital asset market is. So I'm going to start with something that kind of leads off of what Senator Stabenow was asking about. When retail investors purchase traditional financial assets like stocks through cash markets, the transaction is typically carried out through several different entities, including a broker, an exchange, and a clearing and settlement company. FTX, like many other digital asset companies, consolidated several of these processes under one roof. To what extent did centralization and vertical integration of FTX play into its ability to conceal operational risk and fraud from regulators, auditors, and investors? Would rules about conflicts of interest requiring transparency and disclosure make a difference to manage risks in the future? So maybe answer the centralization question and then how you fix it.
Yeah, Senator, this question about vertical integration is a key question. It's one that we were dealing with the application that FTX had before us. In many respects, it's, and I said this earlier in my opening statement, we have to be mindful of this structure because the FTX application was not the first to the CFTC, and it's not going to be the last. So it's a very important issue that we need to think about. The Financial Stability Oversight Council mentioned vertical integration as a risk or a potential risk. And, on one hand, it is a product of technology and the ability to have direct execution to a trading platform or a clearinghouse. And there may be merit there, but as you point out rightfully, there's a lot of potential risks. And that ability to consolidate control over multiple parts of a trade execution or a trade as sort of evolution. So it may have made it easier for FTX. I don't know exactly because really this goes to the point of a lack of regulation and a lack of insight into FTX and what was happening within the entity. and whether or not anyone was identifying these issues. Obviously, conflicts of interest, which
Okay.
you've identified, is a serious issue.
So something that clearly contributed to the collapse is the fact that the exchange took customer funds that it was supposed to safeguard and then lent it to its sister company, Alameda Research, that made reckless gambles, it appears, with that money. My colleagues already asked about the requirement to register. What should be done? Could you talk about what you think the role of the SEC should be in this, and balancing with what role you should be in a perfect world? How do you think this would work? Because we clearly are living in an imperfect world when you look at the collapse that we just saw.
Well, I think the responsibilities would largely be the same, but they would be drawn on the line of what is a security token and what is a commodity token. Much of the market structure that both the SEC and the CFTC implement is similar in terms of overseeing trading platforms, the exchanges, the clearinghouses, and the broker-dealers or the intermediaries. In addition, the investment advisors and the market makers, which is, as you mentioned, the Alameda institution. If we have regulatory authority and regulatory insight into these institutions, then we can impose the requirements around conflicts of interest, about separation of customer money and house money, about disclosure requirements for investors, about books and records that regulators can frequently or even at will examine when needed, having an auditing function. These are all, again, core elements that both the CFTC and CFTC impose on our regulated entities, and I think at its fundamental foundation, nothing needs to change in terms of what we do now with what we should do for digital asset markets.
Okay, the cash market is dominated, you know, for digital assets by retail investors who may not understand the differences in protections offered by digital asset market platforms and traditional financial service companies. Consumers have been inundated with crypto advertising. Anyone that watches Super Bowl knows what I mean, aimed at stirring feelings of urgency, stoking fears of missing out. For the securities market, brokers must follow the SEC's best interest rule and FINRA's suitability standard, which sets rules of the road for the types of instruments brokers can recommend to clients. Do you believe there should be parallel investor protections between digital commodity companies acting as brokers and prospective investors? What additional practices should be required of digital commodity brokers?
Absolutely. In terms of disclosures to investors, the best interest rule and similar rules are absolutely needed to ensure that investors understand the risks of the underlying asset. I've said this many times about the distinguishing factors between commodities and securities and what an ongoing disclosure about the underlying asset would be. But in terms of disclosures to investors before they invest, knowing what they're investing in and how they're doing it, those types of requirements are critically important, and we're doing what we can with what we have right now to provide as much information to investors who are using our markets for Bitcoin futures and other similar products.
But you believe more must be done
100%.
as soon as possible.
Yes.
Okay, last question. In many cases, cryptocurrency companies have utilized social media platforms, including the accounts of influencers and celebrities, to create hype for digital asset products. Last month, the SEC fined Kim Kardashian $1.26 million for failing to disclose she was paid $250,000 to promote a cryptocurrency token on her Instagram account. The FTC has called the blend of social media and cryptocurrency, quote, a combustible combination for fraud, and found that, this is a quote, since the start of 2021, more than 46,000 people have reported losing over $1 billion in crypto to scams. How does the CFTC plan to work with the SEC, FTC, or any other alphabet agency to combat the growing nexus of fraud between digital commodities and social media?
Senator, we work with both agencies, all agencies actively right now. We are in close collaboration on enforcement matters. We're in close collaboration on getting advisories out and word out in terms of customer protections. This is not new or not different than what we've done historically in the swaps market or the futures market. We will continue to do that. We have a shared interest in protecting customers and filling gaps in the marketplace. And there's no doubt in my mind that Chairman Gensler and I will continue to do that to the extent that authority is provided.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Marshall.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I wish we were here today to talk about Michigan football and Ohio State.
Me too.
But
Go Blue.
unfortunately, we have a real serious subject here. Chairman, thank you for joining us. Where we are with cryptocurrency today reminds me of where we were with nuclear physics in the late 1940s and the early 1950s. 2 weeks ago, a nuclear bomb went off in the financial world. We know that nuclear physics can be good, there can be bad from it, just like as we try to understand and think about the uses of digital currency, we all understand there's an upside to it, but there's definitely a downside to it. And where my question is with this is, number one, do you think that crypto should be held to the same standards as banking? And number two, even if we were to pass legislation today, I think it'll take 6 months to years to really get our hands around it. Do you ever consider that there should just be a pause in this cryptocurrency digital world until we get our arms around it?
Senator, thanks for the question. My concern is, and I've said this many times, as a market regulator, as someone who's observed these markets for years, going back to 2017, their growth, the intersection with the CFTC, I don't have the luxury to sit back. I think no matter what, whether it's in the US or offshore, these markets are going to exist. There's going to be participation by institutional and retail investors.
But you agree our arms are not around this. They're not close. Even with this legislation, would our arms be around the potential problems to the American public?
Fully, I would say probably not, but it would be a significant step and a significant improvement to provide disclosures,
do you think that they should be held, crypto should be held to the same standard as a bank?
I think our banking and market regulations are sound. They've worked well, and they've proven to be efficient and effective. And as the DCCPA does, we should essentially model any regulation around crypto off of what has worked in the past.
What would be the impact on our nation's economy if digital replace the U.S. dollar as the world currency?
Senator, I don't know for sure, but given, obviously a lot of movement overseas by China and other countries, I think it's important, and I think you and I have had this discussion, the Federal Reserve is taking this very seriously and understanding that technology is going to disrupt a lot of things, including financial markets and financial systems and potentially our existing currency system. So at least investigating and seeing what the potential is and what the risks are is critically important for both our economy, our labor market, and potentially national security.
That's great. Segment to my questions about national security. I'm sure the other members of the dais would agree when we travel abroad and sit down with the national security officials, one of their, if not their first, their second concern is about how digital currency is being used. Specifically ransomware, $600 million paid in ransomware last year that we know of. That's certainly an underestimate. Anybody in the financial world understands the cyber attacks that are going on, and then how ransomware has basically sprung its own little economy that you have to purchase ransomware insurance now, $1,500 per $1 million of coverage on average. When we talk about human trafficking, drug trafficking, again, crypto is the major currency being used. How can we ever get our arms around that in those worlds when there's bad actors out there?
Senator, without some thought, and I will say Treasury does a fantastic job through FinCEN and OFAC doing what it can with what it has, but a more comprehensive regime and regulatory oversight over all of these markets, I think, would be a huge step in the right direction. We will never be able to comprehensively cover every element and fraud and people who are going to just intentionally break the law, but you're right, I agree with you. So much illicit activity is happening right now using this technology and these assets as the sort of foundation and base, but sitting back in my mind is not an option. We have to use every tool we have and create new tools.
So I agree with you, but I just don't see the tools yet. No one has shown me in a laboratory on paper what those tools look like. Again, this feels like a nuclear bomb is going off and we're not getting our arms around it. That's why we should be considering a pause. 90% of the dark web drug sales are done with cryptocurrency. Would you agree with me that cryptocurrency is a threat to our national security?
Potentially, it is a threat to our national security.
Potentially. I mean, we have 200 Americans dying every day from fentanyl poisoning, and I assume most of those the money laundering going on is done with crypto. Human trafficking, I don't think it's theoretical. I think it's happening every day.
Senator, I don't know those statistics, but yes, if...
Holy sh... shit. I just needed to pause that super quick. We're gonna get right back into it. Yeah, I just had to put, did you guys just catch what they're implementing here? So they talked about a pause, all right? A pause in crypto, which would be like a moratorium, stopping all action related to crypto in the United States. That was the first one. Then they just said here, and I'm sorry, like this just is just catching me way off guard, that this guy is, I'm sorry, he's a piece of shit. User X said, what a douchebag. Yeah, I'm totally with you on here. So basically what we're saying here is because crypto is used to purchase recreational fun thing, we should limit it. That's the same argument they use like with guns, right? It's let's ban the guns. No, it's the people that pull the triggers, right? Cars, let's ban cars because cars cause car accidents. Like that is what you're hearing about right now. This is a complete mess. And this guy here, Rostin Benham, dirty as could be, earlier in the stream, he said that what happened with FTX was a cash run. Not Sam Bankman-Fried taking users' funds and then moving them to other people so that they can gamble with them. This guy's as dirty as could be.
If it is in fact true, then yes, it is a national security threat and is something that we have to take very seriously. But again, I don't see how we put a pause on it. From a U.S. perspective, we could try to ring fence the country from crypto, but it's going to exist offshore. We learned yesterday from the existing CEO of FTX that 2% of the customers' exposure were from the U.S. That's not supposed to happen, but somehow 2% of U.S. customers have exposure to FTX. Folks will find a way to get exposure to offshore entities or activities, even if it's prohibited in the U.S., and we have to do something about that.
Okay, this next one's more of a technical question. Under the current provisions of the Commodity Exchange Act and CFTC regulations, any bank or trust company in the U.S. is a good location for customer money, securities, and property. Senate Bill 4760, the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act pushed by FTX, restricts to insured depository institutions, insured credit unions, and any digital commodity platform. Would you support the expansion of good locations to include any bank or trust company? And if so, why or why not?
I think given what we've learned and what certainly what has happened in the past few weeks, we have to take a fresh look and to ensure that whatever happened at FTX cannot happen again, and that the DCCPA is tightened up to ensure that there are no holes and no gaps in the regulation, and that we ensure customer money is safe and that no illicit activity or fraud could occur.
Thank you so much, Chairman. It's a tough job, and whatever we need to do to put wind beneath your sails is what we need to be doing. Thank you so much. I yield back.
Thank you. Senator Smith.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you very much to both you and Ranking Member Bozeman for holding this hearing today, and thank you for being here, Mr. Chair. So the collapse of FTX has been shocking, but I think it would be hard to say it's surprising. There is still a lot that we need to learn about what's happened, but it looks like this crypto exchange and its related trading firm, Alameda Research, completely failed to safeguard the money that people entrusted them with. And we shouldn't lose sight of the fact that billions of dollars essentially evaporated overnight, and that was real money, including the retirements and savings of Americans who had no idea that their savings were at such risk. The fact is that these crypto assets are highly volatile and risky, and that risk is made worse by a lack of basic consumer protections. And this is why I've joined Senator Durbin and Senator Warren to call on investment firms like Fidelity to keep crypto out of retirement plans. Look, people can invest or bet or gamble or risk their money on anything that they choose to, but in a free and fair market, as you have been saying, Mr. Chair, they should at least be able to count on a fair playing field so they don't get gamed or scammed. So, Chair Benham, I'd like to look at FTX and the crypto world generally and just sort of make clear what's happening and what's not happening today. So exchanges and firms that buy and sell stocks and commodities are required to keep their company money separate from their customers' money. They can't gamble with their customers' money like it's their own. That's correct.
Correct.
And is that required of crypto exchanges right now?
No.
And does any federal agency have enforcement authority to require that?
I believe that the Securities and Exchange Commission has authority.
Okay. When a firm is being paid by their customers to give advice on how to invest their money, they are required to put their customers' interests first, not their own business interests. That's their fiduciary responsibility. That's correct, right?
Correct.
And is that required of crypto exchanges right now?
No.
And does any federal agency have enforcement authority to require that?
Again, and I'll clarify my previous response with respect to the SEC over security tokens only, not commodity tokens.
Right.
This is where the gap exists between us and the SEC. But based on my understanding and hearing from the chairman himself, that they do have the authority to police this market,
Okay, all right.
the security market.
Right, right. Because your distinction is whether, what kind of a thing this
Token
is.
it is,
Is it a commodity thing or is it a stock thing?
Correct.
Right. Companies that are investing other people's money are required to get the best possible price by looking at the best deal across multiple markets, right? That's called best execution. Is that required for crypto trading right now?
No.
Okay. And is there any enforcement authority anywhere in the federal government that would require that?
Again, if my assumption based on the authority that the SEC has over securities and over security tokens, then they can impose the same requirements that they impose on traditional securities, then based on that sort of logic, they would have that authority over security tokens.
Okay. Okay. So, and I have one last question. So banks and other financial services firms have a duty to know who their customers are. That's how we protect against money laundering and keeping crooks and criminals from using legitimate businesses to wash their dirty money. Is that the case for crypto-related enterprises?
So I think this is a little bit distinguishable from your previous questions because this goes to some of the state money transmitter licenses that exist for these crypto exchanges on a state-by-state basis. And there are registration requirements with FinCEN, which would have AML and KYC requirements. And with that in mind, I think there might be some element of what your concern and issues are, but maybe not as comprehensive as a federal regulatory regime over the marketplace that we have with traditional markets.
Thank you. Thank you. So I think that I appreciate the brevity of your answers because I think that what this shows us, the crypto world of FTX shows us what can happen when there aren't basic consumer protections. And, you know, I don't care whether you're buying wheat or stocks or FTT, which is the digital coin that was created by FTX, or whether you're buying some derivatives of those assets. The market should be fair and not rigged, and that's the problem. I would also argue that we know how to do this. Crypto is a new thing, but the rules of the road for how to ensure that markets are fair and that financial institutions know what's happening, I mean, those rules are not new. And it seems, Madam Chair, that our job is to figure out how we can enforce the laws that we have and then plug the holes where those holes exist, or we're going to see more disasters like FTX.
Agree.
Thank you. Let me just ask one last question because I have a bit more time. There are obviously real concerns about FTX collapse and future swings in crypto markets as this instability has unfolded. Since you serve also, Chair Benham, on the the FSOC, and I'm sure that this is something that you think about as well, the impact of crypto on general financial stability. Could you comment on that and how you see that issue?
So I think thus far it hasn't been of huge concern. And if you look back to the spring when we had the Terra LUNA collapse and then now with the FTX collapse, the banking system and the market system have been largely siloed from the crypto system. And I think that is a testament to the value of our banking regulatory system and our market system, and keeping that crypto market out. I at this point, given the current size, and I was here a year ago, I think we were talking about $3 trillion in market cap, and now it's well under $1 trillion itself. There is no direct impact to financial stability, but it's not something that I think we can rest our laurels on. We have to think about what ifs and what may happen in the future, and these are the types of things that concern me, is we can't just assume things will remain the same and things will be safe. We have to be aggressive, we have to be thoughtful of different scenarios, and we have to assume with gaps in the system, as you pointed out, future crises will continue to occur.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Tuberville.
Oh, thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Chairman, for being here. Kind of remind me of sitting in a chair after I got the heck beat out of me in the football game and knowing the other team didn't go by the rules, and I had to explain why, and there's really no way around it. We've screwed this up. You got to have rules, and we've all seen this coming. I've invested in crypto. I didn't get as deep as some of these people have gotten, but it is a mess, and it's going to get worse if we don't get control of it, but we got confidence that you will with our help. We've been trying to help. So, you know, this country needs to be the leader in the world, you know, in financial regulation, you know, all the innovation. And if we don't, we're going to be in trouble. China's got their own digital currency that's cranking up. But, you know, it's a huge problem. I've got people calling me from everywhere going, what are we going to do? What are we going to do about this? Well, it's new. It's totally new, and you go through some hard times, and unfortunately you got a lot of people that have lost money in this, but we've got to get control of it so people get confidence in digital currency, bottom line. So I got just a couple of questions here. First of all, you said you met with Sam, and of course we've had him in hearings before. You got any text or emails with him over the years?
Yeah, so in addition to I pointed out to Senator Stabenow's question, I mentioned there's this sort of dogged desire to get this application approved, and my approach to that application, given the issues and the strong feelings, was that I needed to be as transparent and open with him and FTX, as well as other CEOs who felt the same. So there were a number of emails and messages back and forth, all about the application, about the status of the application. Some of the messages were about scheduling the 10 meetings I mentioned, but it was about updates, giving us, again, this dogged approach to we submitted answers to the questions from the division, or we have more data to just support their advocacy of this application, all in relation to the application.
Okay, good. Thank you. Chairman Gensler is using this collapse to argue that the SEC should run point on crypto regulation, but he has repeatedly cut off pathways for crypto firms to register at his agency. You know, what have you done at the CFTC to encourage digital asset firms to register and enter the regulatory fold?
Senator, this is, you know, it's a great question, but this is at the heart of the problem, right? We've had, since, you know, really 2016, 2017, we've seen an influx of these crypto firms coming to the CFTC to list derivatives products, whether on incumbent or existing registered exchanges, but also crypto firms buying existing derivatives exchanges and starting to list crypto derivatives. New products emerging and new ways that the crypto community can get into derivatives exchanges. But ultimately, and this is the reference I think you're making, in terms of regulation of cash markets, right? The spot market, we simply do not have authority to register cash market exchanges or any intermediary, broker-dealer, or entity within that structure, and that's what concerns me, right? This is the gap. This is the gap that exists. This is the gap that FSOC pointed out, and ultimately, again, to your point, if we don't do something, customers are going to continue to lose money, and we're going to be right back here again in a couple months.
Exactly. On another point here, going back to FTX, you know, these major environmental social governance, ESG, ratings companies gave FTX high marks, very high marks, for corporate governance. We have since learned that the exact opposite was true. What federal agency is responsible for auditing these ESG rating reports? What needs to be done to protect investors from inaccurate reporting by ESG rating companies? And can these people be sued when they do something like this?
Senator, I think it would depend on if these are products that are being traded and there's an ESG rating on it, then naturally I think if it was a security financial product, it would be the SEC that would have to come up with some sort of rating mechanism. But I don't know for sure that it would necessarily be the SEC or potentially another department that might have the authority. But you point out a potential gap in who are the rating agencies. This was an issue in 2008 with the financial crisis. Who is overseeing rating agencies, and what are the conflicts of interest there, and what actions are they taking, and is it truly an objective rating to give consumers and investors the information that they need.
Should this be in some kind of bill that we do with crypto?
To the extent that the issue you raise is a significant problem and one that crypto firms are getting ESG-related ratings, then I think it's something that we should talk about further and make sure that this goes to the heart of disclosures and customer information, which is, I think, is a part of at least the CPA and the bills that are being proposed. Investors need information. We need to bridge the gap between an issuer, a rating agency, and an investor so they know exactly what information they have and they can make the most informed decision. But certainly would welcome the opportunity to work with you and see if we can do something in this.
Well, as we go through this investigation, hopefully, if we look into some of these investors into FTX, we find out, did you look at this ESG report? Did you look at, their credence? Did you invest because of that? Somebody could get in trouble over this, and we need to really look into this. We got people out there doing things they shouldn't be doing, especially when it comes to finances and people losing millions and millions of dollars. But look forward to working with you. I know you'll get control of it. Look forward to people having the opportunity to continue to invest in crypto, but also understand that there's rules and regulations. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Senator Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I welcome Chair Benham. Nice to see you again. Thanks for serving in so many capacities our country, and thank you, Chair Stabenow, for holding this hearing. And we just briefly, quietly talked about how important this is. So thank you. The failure of FTX is shocking to all of us, not only for the misconduct but also for the speed of the collapse. Many critical questions have emerged about the abuse of customer funds and also about the business model in conflicts of many other crypto firms. Also, it's troubling the contagious effect as FTX's connections across the crypto markets have pushed other firms into failure. You know all that, of course. We must make sure we learn the right lessons from this failure. It means creating a framework that safeguards the traditional financial system, that protects consumers, that doesn't put the crypto companies first. Yesterday, I wrote to Secretary Yellen. I look forward to working with her and all the financial regulators to achieve that. Chair Benham, one of the more troubling issues related to crypto is its role in illicit finance and the threat it poses to national security. While I didn't hear his comments, Senator Marshall's comments, I was told—
Thank you, Roarin Wookie, for that. I heavily appreciate it.
Directly, and how about the importance of safeguarding our national security in light of some of the crypto abuses. The Banking Committee, Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee, which I chair, held a hearing in March about cryptocurrencies, how they provide hackers and scammers anonymity and immediate transferability, facilitating cyber crimes like ransomware attacks. That month, a North Korea state-sponsored cyber group carried out one of the largest virtual asset heists ever, worth over $600 million, and then laundered the proceeds. We need to be vigilant about that. FinCEN recently reported that Bank Secrecy Act filings related to ransomware reached over $1 billion in 2021, more than double what they were in 2020.
For those of you that are just joining right now, don't worry, this live stream will be dumped in the live stream folder as soon as it's done. But essentially what you're seeing is the Senate wants to go after crypto. They're basically saying, hey, look, how do we prevent this? Do we need to put a moratorium on crypto? A lot of this falls on the SEC. The SEC needs to start getting more involved. Honestly, the tone we've heard from the Senate has been all one thing. We need to stop crypto before this mess spreads and affects our financial system.
We don't know what 2022 will show, but we need to be concerned. So my first question, do we need to make combating the use of crypto and illicit finance more of a priority across all of the federal regulators?
Yeah, Senator, thank you for the question. Thank you for the letter also to Secretary Yellen. We did see it and certainly look forward to working with you and Treasury Department. This is an enormously important issue. You pointed out, Senator Marshall raised it as well. There is so much opacity and potential activity in the shadows around illicit activity using cryptocurrency and digital assets. As you pointed out, Treasury is doing an excellent job with the tools they have. I think there's a technology curve that we're all learning and trying to climb right now to understand how this technology works and to identify illicit activity. But we will certainly, to the extent we have within our enforcement authority, work with Treasury, work with OFAC, FinCEN, as you said, under the Bank Secrecy Act and other authorities to make sure we're rooting out any illicit activities possible. But I would say comprehensive regulation, as you've suggested and proposed, is going to be an important and critical tool to take a step in the right direction and identify all of this illegal activity.
Thank you. You play an important role in this. I appreciate your acknowledging Treasury and their action plan to mitigate the illicit finance risk of digital assets, what they issued in September. That's a key step, and the fact that you all understand how this is cross-agency, so thank you. The FTX collapse demonstrates the inherent conflicts and even worse, self-dealing in some crypto business models. We know it's important to avoid dangerous incentives in the financial service industry. For example, banks have restrictions of proprietary trading and transactions with affiliates, as do registered investment companies. Wouldn't similar safeguards make sense for crypto firms?
Absolutely. The idea that we have, as you pointed out, I mean, just thinking about the markets that the SEC oversees, that we oversee, the idea that an exchange can act as a dealer, can act as a lender, can act as a custodian, just doesn't work. It doesn't exist in our existing traditional financial system, and I think those same principles and regulations should apply to crypto.
So are there other conflicts that should be addressed or prevented? Have you thought about sort of looking at that?
So based on what we know with what happened to FTX, and then certainly what we know with other traditional crypto firms and the services that they offer to clients, it seems to be the exchange traded function, the market making function, the broker-dealer function, a lending function, and a custodian. That is a long list of things that typically do not occur by a single institution. There may be other things certainly worth looking into, would work with you and your staff, but those are core elements that we see the services being provided and certainly could never be allowed in traditional financial systems.
Thank you, and I appreciate working with Chair Stabenow, your focus on your jurisdiction here, that crypto products understanding touch not only commodities markets, what you work on, but also securities and banking. Your comments have already indicated what you think about that, but one more last question, and to expand on that, would you commit to continue working with the other regulatory agencies to minimize these gaps and to make sure consumers in the financial markets are fully protected?
Senator, it's the absolute most important priority. There's been, a narrative about a power grab. This is the farthest thing from it. It is about filling a gap and doing what we can do as a commodity market regulator to fill the gap, to protect customers, and to prevent us from having to be here again talking about another bankruptcy.
Thank you. And I've had individual conversations and one-on-one and through the committee process with a number of the other regulators, especially SEC, and even the Fed, a little more distantly, the Fed and Treasury and FDIC and all of them. So, of course, I know I understand your sincerity here and your genuineness and how important that is. Last point, Madam Chair, I ask the Chair's consent to enter into the hearing record a letter from the North American Securities Administrators Association highlighting considerations for Congress.
So ordered without objection.
Thank you. I yield back. Thank you.
Thank you. Senator Grassley.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. When I bring up the word whistleblower, I don't do it in the sense of the legal sense of the word whistleblower, but I always try to get people like you to listen to what's going on in the department and take an action on it so people don't have to become what you call official whistleblowers. So we've heard many reports that people involved with the FTX had concerns about its business practices. Unfortunately, it doesn't appear that anyone stepped forward to report on what was going on. Did your office receive any reports of wrongdoing involving FTX? And if not, do you believe employees would have stepped forward if the program was better publicized?
Senator, we did not receive any tips or whistleblowing activity about FTX, and we looked at that very thoroughly over the past few months to ensure that was the case, and that is in fact the case. We did not receive anything. Certainly appreciate your support of our whistleblower program. It has been extremely effective in supporting our enforcement division and the enforcement actions we've brought at record-breaking numbers. We do everything we can at the agency, but I will commit to do more than we're doing to ensure that whistleblowers feel safe and protected, and that they can come to us without fear of retribution.
Since we got my bill passed, do you have the money to pay the whistleblowers?
We are currently in a good place, but I think we do need to continue to work on making sure that the program is effective. The reason that we've had a challenge is not a bad reason. It's because we've rewarded so much money to whistleblowers, and the cases we've brought have been so significant. I hope that continues because we have a huge participant pool and a lot of fraud that we need to police. But I appreciate your support in working with us, and we'll ensure that your bill is passed and it supports the program, and that we can continue making these significant payments to whistleblowers.
You told us in previous testimony how many times you met with representatives of FTX. Sam Bankman said that he had spent tens of thousands of hours with the CFTC. In regard to you personally, have you made your calendar public? And if not, when could we expect that to happen?
Thanks, Senator. As I mentioned to Senator Stabenow, we've taken an initial look at my calendar, and as I said, we've had, over the past 14 months, 10 meetings with Mr. Bankman-Fried and his team. There were 2 phone calls and a few messages, all related to either scheduling the meetings or giving us information about an application. And I would just emphasize that to you. The relationship that the CFTC had with FTX was about the regulated clearinghouse, Ledger X. It had nothing to do with the activity that was happening.
Real quick here, and I'm seeing it in the comments. Are you guys noticing a definite tone change? Before the election, all right, there was a lot more positivity on both sides of the aisle from crypto. After the election, after everyone's casted the votes and they've gotten whatever they can get out of it, right? Now they start going after crypto. Read in between the lines here. They used people for votes, and as soon as the votes were over, they are coming down hard on crypto.
Happening offshore or the spot exchange, which we don't regulate. As I said, they were dogged in their approach to getting this clearinghouse application approved, which meant Mr. Bankman-Fried and his team meeting a lot of CFTC staff over the course of many, many weeks and months, and many meetings, as I said, 10 meetings with me and other communications to just share information with us, update information about the application, and doggedly give us as much information in advocacy of their application. That said, we'll take a fresh look given the initial review and get that up to the committee as soon as possible.
In regard to just what you said about Ledger, and I think you've answered some of my questions, but did the CFTC ask for any financial information or organizational charge? And can you provide the committee what FTX shared with your commission?
Senator, it's an important question, and unfortunately, our legal limitation in terms of authority to ask questions or to examine entities stopped at the regulated entity. We at the CFTC do not have legal authority to police, to examine, or to ask questions about an unregulated entity. The only circumstance is if we get a whistleblower tip, if we get a referral, or if we have information that is going to meet the test to get a subpoena in court after passing the commission vote. That's the only way we could then start asking questions and use subpoena authority to start investigating or examining a non-registered entity. And this really goes to the heart of an issue that we have right now. But I will say, in contrast, that legal limitation is the same reason that customer money in the Ledger X entity is safe and it is where it's supposed to be. But I certainly look forward to working with you if you'd like to see if there can be a change to that authority, but it is a delicate balance that we have to approach. But to repeat myself, there is no existing authority to ask questions beyond the regulated entity.
You know, the guy that is now CEO of FTX, he was involved with the Enron liquidation. He said he's never seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and complete absence of trustworthy financial information. So getting back to what Bankman-Fried said about FTX spending tens of thousands of hours with the CFTC, I'd like to know, how did the CFTC miss this complete lack of corporate control?
So Senator John Ray, who's the individual you're referencing, when he talks about complete lack of controls, he's talking about the non-CFTC companies. Chairwoman Stabenow mentioned in her statement that John Ray made a statement about LedgerX, the CFTC entity, and he said there's good governance, there's liquidity, there's capital, and it's fully operational, and it's in good shape. So John Ray was very clear that the CFTC regulated entity is healthy, capitalized, and operational, and that's in stark contrast to the non-regulated entities. But it's for that reason exactly, and the limitation that I shared with you earlier, that we do not have legal authority to go beyond the regulated entity. And since the regulated entity was fully in compliance, fully operational, and met all of the legal requirements of the CFTC, we had no basis or reason to sort of pierce through the entity and start fishing or asking questions about affiliate entities or non-CFTC registered entities.
In regard to the bill that was introduced in August or sometime this summer, and if you've been working with people on that legislation, is there anything in that legislation that ought to be rewritten from what we know now from FTX?
Senator, thanks for the question. Certainly, given the circumstances of the past few weeks, I think we should take a pause and look at the bill and make sure there are no gaps or no holes. We're going to learn more information about FTX in the coming weeks, and we will certainly take that information and share it with the committee. Two things that have come to mind in terms of what we've learned thus far and where the bill may be strengthened: disclosures around financial information of the entity, the crypto entity, and conflicts of interest. Obviously an issue that many members have talked about today, given the brazen conflicts that occurred at the non-regulated entity. And I think there should be an effort both by the committee, and we certainly look forward to supporting you in tightening and strengthening the conflicts of interest provisions.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm going to turn now to someone who spent a whole lot of time on this, and thank you for your leadership and co-sponsorship of the bill. Senator Gillibrand.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Benham, for being here, and thank you for taking the committee through what happened here and what role the CFTC has played and could play in the future. And I want to drill down on a couple areas where I still see risks that are coming ahead. I think you've made it very clear to the committee that comprehensive legislation is necessary. Senator Lumens and I wrote a very broad bill for all committees of jurisdiction, including the Banking Committee, including the Finance Committee, including the Intelligence Committee. But what the Ag Committee has done is focused on your jurisdiction, and this bill that the chairman and ranking member have put together is quite comprehensive, and I will be very grateful for you to give us the guidance about how to improve that, as well as the framework bill that Cynthia Lumens and I put together. I'm very concerned about the issues that you've talked about today, and I'm very concerned specifically with the potential of future problems. So responsible governance is something that we've talked a lot about today, and the absence of which really contributed to the FTX's debacle, especially its foreign registered entity. So for Senator Grassley, the difference between the foreign entity and the U.S.-based entity isn't necessarily clear. So I'm on the Intelligence Committee, and so I'm very concerned about who owns and who controls our critical infrastructure, such as platforms engaging in financial exchange and custodial services. My concern is particularly acute where foreign interests may conflict with those of the United States, and of course the FTX debacle has shown bad actors, foreign and domestic, can contribute to global digital asset markets' nefarious ends, harming United States consumers. The CFTC's current rules, I understand, provide that where ownership of the CFTC licensed exchanges changes at the holding company level, as when FTX US purchased the CFTC registered LedgerX digital asset derivatives exchange last year, the registrant has to notify the CFTC of the change of control. The Commission's current rules do not require detailed information about purchasing entity or its beneficial owners, nor do the current rules allow the Commission, where appropriate, to require conditions to the transaction to manage risk or to block the sale in exceptional circumstances. So, for example, if a hypothetical Chinese actor wants to acquire this entity who has questionable background and perhaps criminal activity undisclosed, this is something that the CFTC should be able to inquire about. So specifically, please tell us how you would address these issues under our legislation for digital asset platforms, particularly those that actually serve retail markets.
Thanks, Senator Gillibrand. Extremely important question, and you rightfully point out the existing authority for the commission to ask questions about an acquisition or some sort of corporate combination is limited. It is essentially a notice filing at best. Given the circumstances of the recent weeks, and this is not an issue that is infrequent for the CFTC. We see a lot of consolidation and M&A activity in the derivative space. I think it's an important issue, particularly with your interests around cyber and critical infrastructure. And this is not unlike the CFIUS process in some respects, which this committee has been very focused on over the years. What can we do to strengthen that authority for the CFTC to be able to ask questions, to be able to demand books and records, to be able to demand information about personnel, management, system safeguards, going to your cyber issue, so that we can better screen and evaluate the acquiring company and what role or impact it might have on the CFTC regulated entity.
And then to follow on Senator Grassley's line of questioning about the undisclosed conflicts of interest, obviously Sam Bankman-Fried had several other entities that were double dealing or using assets that should have been not located in an area where he could have used them. We had allegations of inadequate books and records. We have allegations of how FTX's own tokens were reportedly used as collateral by customers and affiliated entities for massive loans. So these are just enormous numbers of conflicts of interest that will be investigated. Please describe under the proposed legislation by both Senator Boozman and Senator Stabenow, as well as the more framework-oriented bill with Cynthia Lumens, how the CFTC would address these conflicts, and does that legislation provide the Commission with sufficient leeway to ensure identification, mitigation, disclosure, and where appropriate, prohibition of these conflicts?
Senator, this goes to the heart of market regulation. I've mentioned this before, these issues that you rightfully point out around conflicts of interest, about custody of funds, about books and records to examine, about financial resources to make sure that an entity has financial resources to be a going concern over a period of time. I think that the current bill is very effective in addressing nearly all of these issues. As I said to Senator Grassley, I think it's important that we tighten the conflicts of interest provisions because of the egregious nature of what we learned with FTX. And I think there's a way to do that. Disclosures to customers about financial resources also will be an important issue to address, and certainly look forward to working with you on that. In terms of authority and our experience at the CFTC, when we're able to impose these requirements on a regulated entity, it is quite workable and effective. And I will use the Ledger X entity as an example. On a daily basis, we know where the customer money is. And we don't have to go through Ledger X. We go directly to the custodian with direct access to know and identify the customer money. Books and records, on demand, we are able to examine books and records. These are just some examples of the direct relationship that regulation provides. And I think in the case of crypto and the bill DCCPA and your bill with Senator Lumens, these would be the authorities we have, and we could impose them and bring much more transparency to these unregulated entities.
Okay, so I have one last question that you may not know the answer to. But in your testimony, you just said that you thought that approximately 2% of FTX's customers of the international entity were U.S. persons. And so that would lead me to understand that either FTX lied or were untruthful about their business, and they actually should have been registered with the CFTC or the SEC under current rules and subject to CFTC's fraud and manipulation authority. So how can the CFTC investigate more aggressively to deploy its current enforcement authority where overseas exchanges in fact have such significant and actual business within the U.S., putting U.S. persons and the U.S. economy and other entities at risk?
Thank you, Senator. So I'm happy to share this with the committee, but this was a disclosure document made by John Ray yesterday. It's a pie chart, and it says, where the lost customer money is across the globe. There's huge amounts of money in some sort of island jurisdictions. 2%, there's a sliver from the U.S. I I feel fairly confident there are a number of US-based entities that have entities registered offshore that we're trading and will have exposure, and that's a huge issue. We should always think about institutions that have offshore entities that could potentially bring risk back to the US. From a retail perspective, and this is just my understanding, I've heard this for a number of years, some savvy retail investors are able to go around the virtual private networks, these VPNs that are essentially act as the firewall for an activity that happens offshore. That's an area that we could potentially look at. I don't know if it's an area that the CFTC has the expertise to look at, but perhaps we can work with other federal agencies to see how we can protect those firewalls and prohibit US customers from getting around those prohibitions.
And I think this issue is one that the committee needs to understand. When you have a foreign registered entity, there are limitations about what we can actually regulate and how we can provide the oversight and accountability. But the examples that I brought up today are examples that could impact other businesses. So that's why I would like you to do some deep thinking about, in this particular market of digital assets, where there is always these workarounds and these abilities to get access to different markets, and then the related lack of registration where there should be, it's going to be something that you will have to wrestle with. And I certainly, and I'm certain this committee wants to help, because if you've heard from every person's testimony here so far, their constituents are very nervous about how this impacts U.S. markets and how it impacts U.S. persons. So that's why I think the bill that the chairwoman and ranking member have put together for this committee is so essential. If we don't regulate this industry, we're going to see more collapses, more bankruptcies, and a head in the sand approach is absolutely unacceptable. And so we are very eager to work with you on solutions.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Senator Fisher.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being here today. There's a lot of questions that are around FTX's self-minted exchange token, FTT, and it seems clear that FTX and Alameda Research used FTT and the token, I think it's pronounced Solana, to inflate their own valuations and then misused it as collateral in their risky business investments and their ventures. So, Mr. Chairman, would the Digital Commodities Consumer Protect Act provide the CFTC or the SEC regulatory authority over transactions in FTX's exchange token, the FTT?
So from my understanding, and there was a sort of a compensation mechanism with the FTT token. There was an incentive mechanism. And I'm just sort of talking in real time here. Based on that incentive mechanism, it probably suggests characteristics that are more like a security and not a commodity. If that's the case, this entity you're talking about is offshores, but let's assume it's onshore, then there would be, onshore being in the US, and there would be authority within the SEC to oversee that organization.
Under the DCCPA, would the CFTC or the SEC have regulatory oversight over the Solana token?
So I don't want to opine on the Solana. I think either way, if we consider Solana a commodity under the DCCPA, that authority would be provided to the CFTC. If Solana and work needs to be done, investigation, sort of analysis needs to be done. If Solana is a security, then the SEC has existing authority to police the Solana token.
How many of these tokens are traded on the FTX US platform? Would the CTA or the CFTC have spot market oversight under the proposed legislation? Under
the proposed legislation, the CFTC would have authority to register spot exchanges. So in that scenario, then the FTX US entity would have been required to register with the CFTC. We would have had to go through a process to figure out which tokens are commodities and which are securities. The commodity tokens would have been listed on the CFTC registered exchange. And I think we've talked about this. There is likely going to be dual registration, which is not uncommon in our financial markets between securities and commodities. And with that registration and that lens into the registered entity, we would be able to prohibit conflicts of interest.
So that's going to be helpful in the future.
It's going to be, it is, Senator, it goes to the core of the issue. It is critically important It is the gap that exists that provides and presents customer protection risks.
Okay. With the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act, it instructs the CFTC to write rules and guidelines for all aspects of the legislation, including rules related to customer protection, margin or leverage trading of digital commodities, conflict of interest, lending activity, reporting of trades, and other information, and stable coins. So, Mr. Chairman, what kind of timeline and rulemaking process do you expect to take place if this would become law?
Senator, a tough question.
It takes you guys forever, let's be honest.
We would work vigorously and hard to get this done. I've obviously been a huge advocate for authority and understanding the risks that exist every day that goes by without action. I'm not, as the chairman, I'm not willing to accept that responsibility. I quickly, just for 20 seconds, using the post-financial crisis experience as an example, the CFTC was able to implement over 60 rules, significant rules over the swaps market in a period of about 3 years. So if we can cut that 60 number, and it would be cut significantly with the DCCPA, probably down to single digits, I am confident that we would do everything in our power to get the rules done as soon as possible, and hopefully within a 12-month to 18-month basis at most.
Would it be helpful if Congress would provide more guidelines?
Around the statutory provisions?
Yes.
Well, it's a difficult balance because as drafted now, and again, we need to take a fresh look at the bill given the circumstances of the past few weeks, but it's a balance between providing sufficient statutory authority and direction, but not too much, not too prescriptive, such that the agency can't evolve with the marketplace through the rulemaking process. Obviously, as you know, the statutory process, the legislative process is a key critical component, but the rulemaking process, which goes through the APA, the public comment and reporting period, this is a critical element of the process. And I think as drafted now, notwithstanding some changes that we may need to make given the circumstances of the past few weeks, it's drafted in a very good way that balances prescription and direction with enough flexibility to evolve with changing technology.
Mr. Chairman, when you were here last before the committee, you and I had what I thought was a really good exchange on the important role that state security regulators play in the patchwork of financial regulatory systems that we have. And as a former state securities regulator yourself, you know that state security regulators have a strong record of protecting and educating investors in matters involving those digital assets. But I do worry that communication between the federal and state regulators is lacking, specifically as it comes to these digital assets. Do you support inviting state security regulators to have a seat at the table and be more involved in the federal advisory boards and working groups related to these assets?
Senator, absolutely. I was talking to Senator Tuberville about this before the hearing started, and mentioning, Senator Brown submitted for the record the letter from NASA, which was submitted yesterday. I spoke to the head of NASA, Joe Borg, a few weeks ago just to share notes on what's going on with FTX. As you and I discussed the last time I was here, this is, and in my experience as a state regulator, this is boots on the ground at the local level. It couldn't be more important to have state security regulators working with local officials, working with local investors and local communities to make sure people understand the risks and understand information that they need in order to invest their money appropriately.
Thank you, and thank you for the work you do.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'll turn now to Senator Lujan, and thank you for being a co-sponsor of this legislation.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair, and to our ranking member as well for bringing us together yet again, but for your leadership on this issue as well. Mr. Chairman, thank you for being with us again. When FTX US acquired LedgerX, it acquired an entity that was fully licensed and regulated by the CFTC. Despite this factor, widespread accounts at FTX and FTX US were mismanaged at the highest levels. Mr. John Ray, who is overseeing the bankruptcy filing, highlighted the scope of corporate negligence in the Chapter 11 filing for FTX when he said, quote, "Never in my career have I seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here." From the guy that oversaw the liquidation of Enron. It's pretty startling. So my question, Mr. Chairman, and if you can answer this yes or no, excuse me, did the CFTC have legal authority to examine the governance structure, balance sheet, or other financial documents for any entity other than Ledger X that was associated with this acquisition?
No.
Are there other instances where unregulated entities have acquired CFTC regulated products being legally offered to U.S. consumers? And what risk does this pose to American consumers?
Senator, and this is, I think, goes to the conversation I had with Senator Gillibrand. You know, it's important as a lesson learned about what conflicts and what relationship a CFTC regulated entity has with other affiliates, both in the U.S. and across the globe. Currently, the authority is limited to essentially a notice filing, where the registered entity would only have to give notice to the CFTC that they're being acquired or they're, you know, in some sort of consolidation or combination with another entity. Obviously, as we're learning now, this has huge potential impacts on U.S. investors. But I would say this, for the same reasons that we, the CFTC, were not able to look into the other affiliates, which John Ray described as essentially a disaster, it was those same legal reasons that the FTX affiliates, while all of this illegal activity was happening, were not able to pierce through the Ledger X entity and potentially steal or use U.S. customer money out of Ledger X. And that's a tough balance. It's something we should think about collectively, but my job is to protect U.S. customer money in CFTC regulated entities. And knowing what we did with Ledger X and what we are currently doing, that is what I'm focused on. But certainly what we're learning, we should think about whether the policy is appropriate, whether it needs to change, and whether or not there are risk offsets to allowing us to go past the registered entity and what those risks are and what that cost benefit is between the registered entity and the non-registered entities.
So what is the CFTC currently doing to ensure customer funds on Ledger X are safe?
Thanks, Senator, for the question. We are in communication on a daily basis with both Ledger X and also the custodian, and we have a more direct relationship with the custodian to ensure that customer property, customer money is at the custodian, and this is both digital assets and also fiat money. We continue to have that relationship. The entity is operational, it's well capitalized, it has financial resources for 12 months on a rolling basis. It has books and records that we can examine, and we are ensuring all conflicts of interest and every requirement under CFTC law is met today and in the future.
I appreciate that. I'll be asking you to submit an answer to this in the record, so I'll make sure I get it to you and I'll submit it to the committee. But what corporate governance standards should be required for exchanges like FTX US? I know it's a long answer, but I'm very interested in hearing from you directly on that. Mr. Chairman, the last time you appeared before the committee, you stressed that on issues like conflicts of interest, you would regulate spot digital assets similarly to how the derivatives market is currently regulated. Digital assets, however, are very different from traditional commodities and stocks. Since these assets are not tied to equity in a company, tangible good or hard currency, there's more volatility. Entities and tokens can be deeply interconnected through smart contracts. And when the asset itself is digital, the risks from security vulnerabilities and hacks are much higher. So my question is, what special considerations are necessary when setting rules for digital commodity platforms?
Senator, thank you for the question. I stand by, what I said probably a few months ago, and I probably said many times in the past, and even today. The core fundamentals of market structure are what we should rely on and lean on and anchor ourselves in as we think about what a regulatory structure would look like for digital assets. However, you make an extremely important point that there are distinguishing factors between traditional assets, whether it's a commodity or a security, and digital tokens, whether they're securities or commodities. I think the two key elements are essentially what you raise is custody and cybersecurity. And how are we going to utilize the tools we have in terms of custody and how we custody digital assets? And what do we need to do from a CFTC perspective? It's called system safeguards to protect the entity and the institutions from potential cyber hacks and cyber attacks. And those are things that would come through the rulemaking process, but I certainly would welcome a rethink of the current DCCPA to strengthen those guidelines around cybersecurity through system safeguards, and that's a core principle, or what the custodian relationship is and what minimum requirements a custodian of digital assets should have in order to protect those assets and appreciate some of the fluctuations and the volatility that these assets have because they're intertwined with a much larger system of financial resources.
Appreciate that. And Madam Chair, I have a few other questions. I'll submit them into the record and I yield back.
Thank you very much, Senator Lujan. And Senator Thune, who is also a co-sponsor of the bill.
Yes,
Thank you.
indeed. Thank you, Madam Chair, and Ranking Member Bozeman for having today's hearing and giving us the opportunity to examine this recent collapse. And Chairman, thank you for appearing in front of the committee today. My dad, who was born before the stock market crash and then went through the Great Depression, always said, if it seems too good to be true, it probably is. And I think that's, it looks like this whole thing, there just wasn't any there. I mean, I don't know how they were able to pull this off for as long as they did. Obviously being offshore and not being subject to, you know, the visibility that regulators might otherwise have. But it's just really pretty stunning. And I'm, as everybody is here, I think, deeply troubled by all the information that's come to light as it relates to what appears to be, at the very least, some incredibly serious wrongdoing on the part of FTX. And I think that whole collapse, again, underscores the need for greater oversight and transparency of the digital asset marketplace. I think that's why we need a comprehensive regulatory approach for digital assets that ensures that federal regulators have the proper tools to oversee this market, and it's increasingly clear that Congress needs to act soon. Could you describe, you know, what enforcement actions CFTC has taken or is considering to take following the collapse of FTX?
Senator, unfortunately, I can't talk about ongoing investigations, but as I've said before in the past, we will utilize every tool we have to the fullest extent of the law to bring wrongdoers to account. As I've said this before, we've probably talked about this. It is an extremely powerful tool we have, enforcement over digital assets, but given this limited authority, which you just referenced, unfortunately, when we act, it's often after the fact because the information that allows us to bring an enforcement action in digital asset cash commodity markets is only because information is coming to us from outsiders, from referrals, from tips, and whistleblowers. And this is in stark contrast to some of the surveillance tools and examination tools that we would have if we had a comprehensive regulatory framework over digital asset commodities.
And is your full commission engaged on this issue?
Absolutely.
Are the CFTC and SEC collaborating on this investigation? Okay. Is CFTC currently considering, and I know we're talking about a statutory legislative, some guidance on this, but currently considering changes to its approach for oversight enforcement activity of other digital commodity platforms since the collapse, absent the legislative framework we're talking about?
I think if we think about, it really comes down to the limited authority. We have a number of incumbent exchanges that have a wide variety of financial assets in the commodity space that also list Bitcoin and Ether futures contracts. There are a number of sort of new startup trading platforms that are listing similarly situated futures contracts in Bitcoin and Ether. As I mentioned earlier, you know, we've had incumbent or native crypto firms buy existing licensed CFTC exchanges and start listing contracts. The authority for us to go beyond the registered entity is limited. We have limited lens into the cash market, and this is no different in agricultural complex or energy or metals complex. But essentially it is when we get information about potential fraud or manipulation in a cash market is really the only time we have that ability to go through the futures market and start scoping around the cash market. And that's the handcuff we have. That's the gap that we have that we're not able to fill right now.
And you did discuss, and I know it's been talked about some here already, LedgerX in your testimony. What would you say in terms of the characteristics of the two, what sets LedgerX apart from FTX?
Senator, just quite simply, it's a CFTC regulatory regime. I mean, it is a forceful, strong, transparent regime that they had to comply with, and if they didn't comply with it, there would have been consequences, period.
And are there lessons, I mean, obviously learned from their registration with CFTC that we ought to consider?
I think, as I mentioned to Senator Gillibrand and Senator Lujan as well, this question about our ability to pierce through, I'll use that word, the regulated entity. In this case, the questions that I'm getting today, we've gotten in the past. There have been some suggestions which are just false, that we had some authority to go into the FTX entities. We simply did not. It is a limitation. It's a wall off of our authority. And I think that might be something to consider, but I would say it comes with risks, and that's what we need to balance, because what are those risks? Those risks are, I couldn't come before this committee today and tell you I know exactly where customer money is in the LedgerX entity. And that's what worries me, right? If we had that reciprocal relationship with non-registered entities, these other FTX affiliates, would that have given the FTX affiliates an opportunity to fish around LedgerX and potentially take that customer money? In which case, that's not a message I want to be sharing with you.
Right. And in terms of sort of the global situation, since these are traded globally, regulatory structures in other places around the world, are there some where that can act as sort of a model for how we might do things here? And is the lack of regulation other places create the kind of systemic risk that seems like could be very real in this industry absent that?
Yeah, Senator, it's an important question because I think right now, as in the regulatory community and having conversations with my colleagues here in the U.S. and overseas, it's this balance between validation and risk management and customer protections. And I err on the side of customer protections and risk management. And I'm not suggesting my colleagues don't care about that. We all care. That's the number one priority. But you could see how, you know, this concern of if we regulate it, you're going to validate it. And why are we validating? Because a lot of people think that, you know, not unlike what your father told you, like if it's not there, what's the there? And if it's too good to be true. But from my perspective as a market regulator, I don't think we can regulate this out of existence. And even if we tried to regulate it outside the borders of our country, it would still exist elsewhere. And that risk would inevitably come back to us through retail or institutional. And I don't want to keep coming back to this committee after another bankruptcy or after another failure. It's just too important to take action. And I will remain agnostic on the success or failure of the technology. That's not my job. My job is to protect customers, to fill gaps, and to tell this committee what I think is important to do so that your constituents don't lose money and don't have the information they need to arm themselves when they're making investment decisions.
Yeah, very good. All right, thank you. Thanks, Madam Chair.
Thank you very much. Senator Durbin.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Chairman Benham, for being with us today. I'm glad that we're having this hearing. I know that we thought about it a few weeks back. The world has changed pretty dramatically, and it really became more compelling for us to move forward on this, and I'm glad that you're here. I know a little bit more about your agency than some because the CFTC is a major regulatory agency when it comes to a massive investment industry in the city of Chicago. And so I've watched it through the years as a member of the House, a member of the Senate, and have a great deal of respect for it. I've always felt that you are a legitimate cop on the beat, and that's one of the reasons why the integrity of the process in Chicago is respected, not just statewide and nationwide, but worldwide. So I want you to be strong and appropriately funded to regulate an industry which is very important to the state that I represent. That's my intro. That's not bad, right?
Senator, I couldn't be more happy and thankful for that statement.
So let's talk about FTX for a minute. Less than 3 years old, supposedly worth $32 billion, 1 million users, and it collapsed overnight. I saw what Mr. Bankman-Fried was tweeting. I suppose that's where his users get their information. And he led them right up to the cliff, the edge of the cliff, and then they fell off and couldn't recover what they had invested in the process. I just might add, and I think it should be noted by all the members on this committee, there'll be a reporter waiting in the hall, I've already talked to her this morning, who will ask you, did he ever contribute to your campaign? I said, oh no, I never heard of the man. She said, you're wrong, Senator, he contributed to you. So the cryptocurrency people are active politically, and they are trying to achieve a political end here. It is their right as citizens of this country to do that, but it really calls on us to make sure that whatever we do is credible under those circumstances. How long will it take to unpack the FTX mess to be able to understand exactly what happened and where it stands today?
Senator, I think, you know, we have a cursory understanding of what happened. We mentioned this today, the commingling of funds, the conflicts of interest, the lack of a custodian to separate those funds, the lack of books and records, as John Ray has said, just a sort of complete disaster from risk controls. I think that's fine at a cursory level. I think it's going to take months probably before we truly understand the extent and scope of the failure.
And who's going to do that investigation?
Senator, as I mentioned to Senator Thune, you know, we are a civil enforcement agency. We are using the full extent of our power under the law to police any infraction or violation of the law. I know our sister agencies across the U.S. and the globe are doing that as well. Enforcement cases take time, but we're moving expeditiously, and we understand the importance of this.
So this legislation, which is before the committee to consider, is to enhance or improve your authority in this area. Is that correct?
It's to fill a gap over commodity spot tokens, correct.
All right. So I find this interesting. I want to put it in this perspective. It seems to be there is a competition, at least at the Capitol Hill level, between those who believe there should be no regulation, that this is the new world order. You don't need the full faith and credit of any nation or known entity as long as your computer program is sophisticated enough. I'm skeptical of that personally, but that seems to be one point of view. The second point of view is CFTC is a nice agency, but it's a small agency, and this is a big, big problem and challenge. If it's going to take you months to figure out what happened to one of the larger players when they collapsed overnight, how are you going to maintain the daily regulation of this industry that is, at least until the recent collapse, was mushrooming in size? And there are some who say, you got a fundamental problem that you face here. When you want to fund the CFTC's activities, you come hat in hand to members of Congress because you need an appropriation. The SEC is largely funded by fees charged to those who are using the regulated entities. Now, I know that you asked for a user fee as part of this. And as I understand it, your general appropriation is in the $300 million range for CFTC. Is that correct?
$320 million.
And you believe that the user fees you're asking for from this digital industry will generate how much?
Well, Senator, it depends on how much appropriators set the level at. And that would obviously require collaboration with us. But what we would have to do if the DCCPA passed at the agency level is determine what funds we needed to implement the rules and to enforce and impose the rules, and then provide a request to you, and you would set the level, not unlike the SEC, and then we would collect those fees requisite with what you set the level at.
So ultimately, Congress has something to say about the user fees.
You have all to say.
So the reason I'm doing this is to put it in the context. Mr. Bankman-Fried, my contributor, and people just like him are going to be spending a lot of money to make sure there's as little regulation as possible. And unfortunately, you are a captive of a process that is driven by politicians like myself. So what assurance do we have that you're going to have adequate resources, the staff, the technology, the people, over and above the authority to execute any kind of meaningful regulation of an industry which is almost impossible to describe, let alone regulate?
Senator, a couple of things. I want to agree with you on your point about regulation versus non-regulation. This area needs to be regulated. All components of it need to be regulated, without a question. Second, in terms of responsibilities and the, this narrative of small or weak agency couldn't be farther from the truth. I shared that with Senator Boozman, and I can give you reasons why. We have a separation of duty and a separation of responsibilities at the agency in terms of months-long enforcement action. That is done by the enforcement team. They are best in class in the world, and they are laser focused on this right now, and they will get the job done. That is completely separate than our policy divisions and those that regulate entities and do the day-to-day work of examinations and regulations of our institutions, including the institutions in your state. In terms of why I'm going to be honest and be very forthright about what I need to do, what I need to do, I'm always happy to come before this committee and tell you what I think and tell you what I need, but I'd much rather be at the CFTC doing my job right now. So I'm going to tell you what I need because I need to do my job and I need to fulfill the mandate that you provide to me. So if you provide me authority to oversee cash market, commodity, digital tokens, I will be very transparent with you about what I need to fulfill that responsibility 110% without...
I don't question your commitment to this, your honesty, or your experience, but you are going to go through a political process to determine whether you have $1 to deal with this. The last thing I'll say is I've heard some of my colleagues say, we got to move on this fast. We've got to be the leader in the world when it comes to cryptocurrency. I don't know if they're saying that now as they did a month ago. The notion, and some people have actually articulated to me, do you realize Malta's on the march in terms of becoming a major factor in cryptocurrency? How about Portugal? How about El Salvador? Well, I'm just telling you, I happen to believe, reflecting on Chicago, your agency, and the SEC for a moment, there's a hell of a lot more credibility when the United States says this is properly regulated and the world can respect it. And we ought to take the time to make sure we not only salve our consciences, but make sure that we provide the resources to get that kind of regulation. Thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you very much. Senator Hoeven.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Chairman, you talked a little bit about Ledger X, but is Ledger X the only part of FTX that you actually have regulatory authority over? Are there other aspects of the company that you have regulatory authority over, or just Ledger X?
Senator, in terms of direct authority, Ledger X is the only entity that we have direct oversight over. There is a commodity pool operator, I believe, that's called Ledger, it might be Ledger Prime, and it is mainly regulated by the National Futures Association, which is a self-regulatory organization, SRO. So there is an indirect relationship, but I did want to mention that to you in full transparency. But to answer your question directly, the single entity that we regulate and have the most direct relationship with is Ledger X.
And what is the status financially of Ledger X at this point in terms of assets and obligations, and in terms of your ability to make sure that it retains those assets to cover its obligations?
It is solvent. It is operational. I know where the money, the customer money is on a daily basis through direct communications with both Ledger X and the custodian, which holds the digital assets and the money, the fiat money. The company has financial resources for up to 12 months on a rolling basis. There are books and records that we can examine on a daily basis.
And are you able to, with the authorities you have, make sure that dollars, resources, assets are not siphoned off away from Ledger X? I mean, you're telling us that Ledger X is your responsibility based on the authorities you have for this larger company, FTX, right?
Correct.
You're saying that it is solvent, it is operating, it has assets to meet its obligations.
Correct.
Are you able to make sure it stays that way so that those resources are not dissipated to these other entities of the larger company?
So I would say absent fraud, we are able to do that. And I think particularly in this moment in time where the majority, the 130 entities are going through bankruptcy, and there is a laser focus from John Ray, the current CEO of FTX, and there's a lot of scrutiny about LedgerX and the other entities, it would require a significant act to have money move out of that entity without approval, or that would violate our laws and take them out of compliance and put that entity in any jeopardy.
So you feel you are doing everything you need right now to try to maintain the solvency of LedgerX?
It has been the #1 focus since we learned about the potential for the bankruptcy, is to make sure customer property at the LedgerX entity, the CFTC registered entity, stays exactly where it is. And that's why we're having daily communications with both the custodian and the registered entity.
Well, and this goes to my broader question is, okay, then to properly regulate crypto, you have to start with defining, are you regulating the commodity aspect of it, the securities aspect of it, or the currency aspect, correct? So first, how do you define it? And then how do you determine who regulates or has that jurisdiction? And then third, how do you coordinate it between yourself, the SEC, the Federal Reserve, Treasury, so forth?
Senator, I'll first say from a potential currency or payments element, and this probably goes to stable coins, if it is in fact, or a product is used as more of a payments or currency element, it would be outside of the CFTC's remit. In terms of the security or commodity question, you and I think maybe have had this discussion before, but it really goes to the heart, at least today, of the traditional legal analysis of what a security is and what a commodity is. That said, there are unique characteristics of these digital commodities. It will require hard work and collaboration between us and the SEC to further define what characteristics make up a digital commodity and a digital security. The DCCPA exempts securities. I've said this before, the DCCPA and other similar bills are not a power grab. It is filling a gap in the commodity cash market. If we don't fill the gap, there will be fraud and there will be customer losses in the future. I am confident the CFTC, the SEC, I am committing to you that we will work together, we will figure out a path forward to have a reasonable, productive, and effective means to figure out what is a security token and what is a commodity token and who should regulate.
How do you do that? How do you do that with all those other agencies, make that determination and sort out the jurisdiction and make sure that you have the authorities, and then apply that not only from the standpoint that you're dealing domestically in a global market with all these different products? How do you do that?
Senator, we've done it historically with futures products and swaps products, but just to give you a hypothetical and how we play this out, if the DCCPA or a similar bill were passed into law and I had authority to oversee these cash markets, I think the first steps that would happen is I would speak with my counterpart, Chairman Gensler. We would have our teams get together and start to flesh out a framework for what are the main characteristics of securities tokens, what are the main characteristics of commodity tokens, and then just work through more, granular details of what unique characteristics are. And, we have, I think, on the biggest exchange in the U.S., 200+ tokens being traded. We would have to go through each token and figure out what are the characteristics and is it a security or commodity. That sets precedent. That is the benchmark and the foundation for the future. It's a process we've done in the past and we can continue to do it in the future.
So should this legislation, whether it comes out of this committee or banking or one of the other committees of jurisdiction, have some kind of clearinghouse mechanism like you often have in commercial or in financial markets to sort that out in order for all this to work?
So I will say this is I want to impart on you that we can do this, but if that is something you're interested in, I would certainly welcome the opportunity to work with you. The balance that we always have to strike with statute versus regulations is, especially in an industry like this, I need a steer and direction from you. I need prescription to give me a clear path forward of what my mandate is, but it shouldn't be too prescriptive to the extent that the technology can outrun the law, because it's going to be a lot easier for me to change rules through the public comment process than obviously you to change the law.
But it does go to exactly what we've been talking about here, and that's looking at the legislation before this committee to make sure that it does all the things it needs to do, not only so you can enforce the crypto aspects under your jurisdiction, but so that you can coordinate with the other financial agencies that are going to need to be involved to deal with crypto on a broad basis, not only in this country, but globally.
Absolutely, Senator. And I think especially given the circumstances that we're in today and what happened in the past few weeks, that elevates the need to just take a fresh look and to see where there may be gaps, where we can strengthen the bill. But I would say this, strengthening the bill and filling the gaps is one thing. We need to move forward as soon as possible. We don't want this to happen again in the next few months and have the risk of customers losing money because of these gaps.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. I will indicate there is a vote going on. I will be stepping away to vote. Hopefully, our members who are here have already done that. And we have members that are left. I'm going to leave the gavel in Senator Bozeman's hands, and I told him I would be watching him, though. But I
get a little bit of responsibility here.
That's right. So I'm going to, and thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being here. But I apologize. I need to step away. Thank you.
Senator Bennett.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I've been waiting to be called on all morning, and obviously it was new leadership that was required in the committee in order to be called on. So thank you. I'm grateful for that. And thank you, Mr. Chairman, for being here today. You know, one curiosity I have, and a thing that's given me pause, is just thinking about why FTX would have lobbied so hard for a bill that it could never comply with. Do you have any insight into that at all?
Senator, I've thought about
I'm sure you've thought about that.
I've thought about that myself, and you kind of hit the nail on the head, right? Because I can't speak to what Mr. Bankman-Fried or anyone at FTX was thinking when they were advocating for regulation. But the remarkable thing is to think about it in the context of compliance, right? And what we've learned about the FTX entities, and just thinking about the bill that Senator Stabenow and Bozeman introduced, they would have been so far out of compliance that it wouldn't have even been possible.
I was happy to hear you say earlier to Senator Grassley that you thought in the wake of what's just happened that we need to keep an open mind about what this legislation ultimately is going to look like. And you've already suggested a couple of provisions that you think we ought to add. I think probably everybody on the committee would share that view. I hope that they would, and the need to act urgently at the same time. One of the things that worries me is we have to regulate here. We have to do it. One of the things that worries me is that we might inadvertently be giving the seal of approval to you described it as validation to Senator Thune, but the seal of approval to a global enterprise that we don't know enough about to say to Colorado's teachers and firefighters, this is stuff you should invest your pension money in. I mean, can you talk about some of the risks here? You said that you would err on the side of accountability and err on the side of consumer protection. I think that's the right impulse to have. It doesn't make it any less complex, the balance.
No, it doesn't. And when I have had these conversations with my colleagues in the regulatory space about, what does this mean in terms of systemic risk? What does it mean? We've been now through two major crises, if you think about the spring and Terra Luna and now FTX, and the traditional banking, the regulated banking system is safe. There's been
no contagion.
No contagion, no even market resiliency issues. So let's keep it that way. Why would we even dabble in the idea of changing? And what I always come back to is, especially since 2008 after the crisis, we've been through a lot of bumps in the past 2 years with COVID and then the Russia-Ukraine war and the impact on volatility in commodity markets and markets generally. Our regulations work. They work very well. Our markets are resilient. And the improvements we made after 2008 are very impactful and effective. And my thought process is, yes, I understand that there's been no contagion, but I have to think about that risk to customers and this idea that gaps exist and that future crises might happen, and I can't just sit back and not do anything. But I always lean back on the fact that our regulations work. So if we did bring this into the regulatory fold, then what are we essentially accomplishing? We're eliminating that probability of these FTX type implosions occurring. So
how do we eliminate or prevent contagion from happening as a result of one of these? I'm not arguing that there shouldn't be regulation. I'm arguing that we need to do it in as intelligent a way as we possibly can.
We eliminate contagion by applying the same principles of financial regulation that we apply to traditional finance to the digital asset.
So let me ask you about that. In this, I'm not an expert in digital assets, but if there were not an existing regulatory structure here, if we didn't have an SEC and we didn't have a CFTC, why would it make sense to lodge the responsibility to make these determinations about whether it's a security or commodity and all the other determinations you were just talking about with Senator Hoeven in two agencies versus one, and are there bad things that could happen as a result of having that disparate oversight?
So, we have very different missions. The SEC is a capital formation and investor disclosure-based agency. We are a risk management and price discovery agency. One thing that I've been very cognizant of since becoming chair, and I was commissioner since 2017, but there's this debate about the two market regulators is not new. It's been going on, in this body for years. But standing alone, as I have conversations with my colleagues across the globe, the CFTC and the SEC are two of the largest regulators and regulate the largest markets in the world by far. So standing alone, we're immensely impactful and have huge remits, far greater than most any other regulator in the world. So it's for those reasons, I think, where it's effectively separate and each agency accomplishes its goals. To your point about do we miss anything, I would just point to the markets we oversee. This issue about securities versus commodities really first came up in the early 80s with futures products. There are security futures and there are commodity futures. Bulk of them are commodity futures, but there's security futures. And this came up after the financial crisis, security-based swaps and commodity swaps. And we have done, the two agencies, a very comprehensive job in filling all the gaps. There are essentially no gaps. And I feel very confident today telling you that we can do the same thing in the digital asset space.
And just with the last 40 seconds I have, can you please, you've said it already today once or twice, define the gap for us as you understand it.
So there is, based on the SEC statement, authority to regulate security tokens. The CFTC, the authority stops right now at derivatives markets. We only regulate financial products whose price is based on an underlying commodity. So the gap that exists is what's called cash commodity digital tokens. The Securities and Exchange Commission does not have authority to regulate or oversee any commodity, and we, the CFTC, do not have any authority to regulate cash commodity markets.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Senator Braun.
I've been watching, it's been an interesting conversation. Let's talk about currency itself. That seems to be the most important part of the discussion. Do you think anything with the volatility that crypto has shown can ever become a medium of exchange in the sense that fiat and sovereign currencies have become? And you look at that analog, you don't have near as many exchanges. I just looked to see how many exchanges are out there. I mean, it's a couple pages full. Do you think in the long run we'll get through with this interesting technology that has so much to offer, not only on the provenance of stuff, but to be kind of that foundation for currencies? Will volatility, the way we've seen it, do you think that is just the early stages of it, or do you think it'll be inherent to cryptocurrency going forward?
Senator, I think, one, you can never predict what's going to happen, but I would say if we look in the past, say, 12 months, from the beginning of 2022 to where we are right now, and especially focusing on the events in the crypto digital asset space in April and May when Terra Luna and some of these bankruptcies at these large lenders and hedge funds occurred, the price movement of, and I'm going to use Bitcoin as the most prominent example, moved significantly downward from a much more elevated price. And then the spread or the volatility has really narrowed. more so than it ever has historically. We've largely been in a $5,000, which is a huge move, right, relative to what you're saying, but relative to the history of the Bitcoin volatility, in the past 6 months, it's been very narrow relative to its past. So is that a sign of things to come? Possibly. And could we end up in a situation where Bitcoin or other digital currencies really start to narrow and you have that pressure from bidders and buyers and sellers where that range is much more narrow? It's possible. I would say also quickly, the technology under the undergird of the foundation of the technology is really an issue. The cost from a payments perspective, which I'm sure you've read about, those are issues that I think have to be figured out in order for the application of these tools in traditional finance and payment systems to be applied.
And the other thing we can kind of turn the page back to, the dot-com explosion had a lot of these characteristics. Many of those stocks went up 10 times on public issue, ended up maybe either being of no value or selling way under, and kind of the same dynamic there. We'll see over time. Security or commodity. Wouldn't you think the entities within, the exchanges, maybe ought to be regulated by the SEC, and whatever we end up with that has more characteristics of a commodity, the currencies, end up being regulated by your agency? Is there any need that it would have to be regulated all by one or the other?
I made this comment before, Senator, and I appreciate the question that, under existing authority for the SEC, they cannot oversee a commodity, right? Any commodity class, whether it's...
But we're still trying to define what they are, right, and what all the elements are within it.
We are. I think many of the characteristics should really be driven by historical precedent about what a commodity is and what a security is. I said this before. If we look at the Howey test from 1946, right? It's an investment money in a common enterprise with the expectation of profit from the work of others, right? Those are the core characteristics of a security, and those same fundamental characteristics should be applied to a digital commodity. There probably will likely be different things that we have to add and think about, but fundamentally that's what we're thinking about, because the SEC was created to bridge information gaps between issuers and investors. The CFTC was created to create a market-based structure so that commodities can be traded in a transparent, fair, and resilient way.
That's probably a pretty good paradigm, at least now. A lot of it is structured simply because those are the existing guidelines as well. Here, I think, is the biggest issue. This is a fledgling concept. It's arcane to many, but it also looks like it's got huge potential, because when you look at sovereign currencies, those haven't, in terms of a medium of exchange, it's a hostage to whatever your fiscal policies and your central banking policies are as well. I think we need to really err on the side of making sure that we don't smother it, over-regulate it. It definitely needs some regulation so that we don't take what might be the salvation for many places that don't even have a country that performs in a sovereign way, let alone a currency. So how aware are you of the fact that I look at Bernie Madoff, he was a guy that was a crook involved in retirement. And we're going to have some of that here now, and we might be looking at that being litigated as well. But you still don't want to take the exception, the outliers, and take something this new, this unknown, and put a wet blanket on it for all the future potential it has. Just give me your general thoughts on that.
Senator, I'm going to focus on my responsibility as a market regulator and coming to you and telling you what I'm seeing in markets and the risk to customers and where the regulatory...
Do you want to make an opinion on that outside of your bailiwick?
Maybe in the hallway, but probably not right now.
Fair enough. Good conversation.
Thank you, Senator.
Senator Booker.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much.
Best for the last.
Thank you, sir, for that. And thanks for the work that you've done. And it's been a really bipartisan effort to try to create a regulatory regime that would protect against many of the issues we've discussed. It's good to see you, and you have been extraordinarily available to me and my team as we've been trying to forge a path forward to protect consumers, create more transparency, and I just have a lot of respect for you, not only because you're from New Jersey, but because you do a heck of a good job, so I'm grateful. So we know millions of Americans now have been scammed by this colossal FTX failure. Their exposure has lost a lot of folks their resources, and for some people, their hopes and dreams and security. We have the responsibility, as you know, and a lot of my team, a lot of my colleagues have expressed already, to really understand the impacts of this deception. What are the real regulatory gaps to help to inform our regulatory actions, and how we can work to create a new space with a lot of abuse, how we can make sure that there are actually opportunities within it for the future. Chairman, when you and I last spoke in the committee, I communicated that I actually had a lot of optimism, not in these coins or any particular commodities, but the underlying technology, that there could be hope that we could see, often for lower income folks who are dealing with banks that overcharge or have ridiculous fees, that we could begin to create more expanded opportunity for people that are often either abused by the banking system as it stands right now, or who don't have access to a lot of the conveniences and opportunities within the banking system. So I'm still hopeful that this technology can provide economic opportunities for the underbanked and folks who've been left behind by traditional financial institutions. But that said, without legislation like the DCCPA, we are leaving these same groups of people that I'm most concerned with really vulnerable, as we've just seen. And so we know that there are issues in the industry, and have been said by my fellow committee members, from the scams, fraudsters, risky over-leveraged projects, inadequate disclosure, and more, that are really causing these difficulties. And I think that FTX blow-up is actually indicative of other things that have happened that maybe not have captured as much attention. And so I'm a supporter of the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act, and still believe that the provisions within it would have solved many of the problems we've seen recently had FTX, been registered in the United States, which is a big issue we're not really focusing on. Yeah. But many of the actions that have been allegedly perpetrated have been crimes in this country for over a century. And so the legislation is not going to solve everything, but I think it's important that we move forward with providing a regulatory framework that can protect consumers. And so the first question, I just want to set some things straight, and you've touched on them a bit, but it's been widely discussed in the media that the Stabenow-Boozman bill, of which I'm a proud co-sponsor, is an SBF bill or an FTX bill. And this doesn't match any of the experience I've had with the legislative process. Sam Bankman-Fried did give a lot of feedback, as did many others, from industry, from academia, from the policy community, from your shop and beyond. And everyone's feedback was considered by the chair and the ranking member, who I think did an extraordinary job in getting input from lots of folks. So can you speak a little bit more to this allegation or this idea of the involvement of FTX? You talked about your calendar and what they were talking about, but can you speak to the involvement of FTX in the process of developing the piece of legislation that you've been such a principal advisor to us on?
Thanks, Senator. As far as I know, given conversations that we have had with the committee, because as you pointed out, we were very engaged in providing technical assistance and legal analysis, which is typical process for an authorizing committee and the agency it oversees. And we are continuing to look forward to doing that with you as we think about the bill going forward. And as I know that the chairwoman and ranking member were very inclusive in their exercise of inviting folks in. We took a lot of meetings. I mentioned that I met with Mr. Bankman-Fried and his team 10 times, and we had some message exchanges, mostly about this application for the clearinghouse. But certainly as meetings go and conversations go, we were talking about meetings he was having with other regulators or discussions he was having.
And I'm going to cut you off. I think you've made my point for me. You've met with me a handful of times on this, and I'm just a junior senator from New Jersey. I imagine collectively you've met with us dozens and dozens of times, members of this committee, including testifying. And in that private conversations we had, your mission is not about the wealth of individuals. It's about the protection of consumers and financial security for Americans. Is that correct?
Yes, 100%.
100%. Okay, so financial criminality, rather, is just not new, as I've said. We know that FTX is accused of crimes, of things that have been crimes for a long time. In those cases, enforcement and transparency appear to be the most important issues. We know in the financial world, your agency as well as the FTC have done a lot of work in enforcement. And so the Digital Commodities Consumer Protection Act, among other things, was written to bring more resources to Commodities Futures Trading Commission's ability to create enforcement in this space. Would you just, in my remaining seconds, expand upon the authority and resources enumerated in the bill that have given you the ability to prevent something like what recently happened with FTX? Again, if FTX had been registered in the United States, what are the tools that this bill would give you to protect consumers and prevent some of the things alleged with FTX?
Senator, thank you. Just quick context is right now, I've said this before, every enforcement action we bring in the digital asset space is because someone comes to us.
Right.
And that is not healthy, and that is not good. It touches, as the chairwoman said, I said this, the tip of the iceberg, right? There is a whole area in the shadows. We need registration of exchanges. We need surveillance of market activity. We need direct relationship with custodians who are holding customer money so that we can prohibit and prevent money moving around that's not house money. There are so many tools in a comprehensive regulatory framework that will put us as boots on the ground in the entity to prevent all of these illegal activities.
Thank you very much. And Mr. Chairman / ranking member, I really want to thank you. This has been one of the better bipartisan experiences I've had to try to do what's necessary to bring transparency, bring accountability, bring regulation, and create a real enforcement agency that has the resources to go after people doing bad things. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for being here. And this, as Senator Booker just alluded to, this really has been a very, very helpful hearing. What we want to try and do is just give you the tools in your toolbox to protect consumers. I was the chairman of the Financial Services Subcommittee on Appropriations a couple Congresses ago. Had the opportunity to work with Chairman Gensler in his role that you have right now, and really enjoyed working with him. He's a very talented guy. Have really enjoyed getting to know you and your staff and the great job that you all are doing. Again, you all being very talented, a very talented team. This is something you've got a portion of this. SEC's got a portion of it, and I know that that you all have the ability and the want to get this done. A lot of this is going to depend on you all getting together and just helping us figure out a path forward. But we do have to find that path in an expeditious way, or we're going to wind up talking about the new FTX in the not too distant future. So with that, the meeting is adjourned. Thank you.
All right, everyone, and as promised, we are going to see what Danelle Dixon, she had an interview over on Yahoo Finance. I'm going to play that here real quick for you. We're going to do a little bit of an outro session, discuss what the F word just went on and what we all saw, because if you were watching it like me, you were like, what the hell? So let's get to see what Danelle Dixon said with the Yahoo Finance interview.
Danelle Dixon, Stellar Development Foundation CEO. Good to have you on the show. So I want to get some of your takeaways to some of the sound that we're getting out of this hearing so far.
Yeah, the hearing I think has been really interesting. I think the Chairwoman Stabenow started the hearing by sort of laying the foundation of what they had initially brought forward with the bill, and as well as the ranking member bringing his perspective in. I mean, we were sitting there in September with Chairman Benham on these issues. We support this type of legislation, particularly filling in this gap. And, we definitely want to see some improvements to it in terms of one of the issues that you just raised around definition of security versus commodity, and making sure that the regulation is clear around that. But all in all, when there are gaps, we need to fill them.
Let me ask you the same question, Danelle, that we heard the CFTC chairman ask, which is, if in fact FTX, and we're talking about FTX International, was registered under the CFTC, whether this type of collapse would have happened, whether they would have been allowed to commingle funds with Alameda as is alleged. What do you think?
I mean, the thing that's very frustrating about this is that most of what happened here is just all about really poor management and hubris. It's about the notion that these tried and true controls that we put internally at companies, because we know that they work, just were flouted, they were disregarded. I'm hopeful that regulation and the type of regulation that we're talking about here would have caught that, but it's hard to know. Because, you know, first of all, we don't know all the ins and outs of it yet. We've only seen what we can see from the bankruptcy filings and also what we've heard Sam say himself publicly. But I think that what's most important here is none of this is a commentary on crypto or blockchain. It really was just about the fact that some people thought that they knew how to do this better and they could disregard everything that we've known for years and years and years about what works internally for companies to be able to protect customer assets. So I think that's really the most important takeaway here.
But what does this damage to trust actually do for the industry? We did see a lot of people sort of pulling money out of exchanges, going to hard wallets instead, because they were sort of waiting for the dust to settle to really find out which exchanges they could trust. So I wanted to get your take, because SBF called this a risk management problem that got out of hand. Would you agree with that?
Oh, it was absolutely a risk management problem. Internal controls, there's so many issues that we're seeing right now that we know, and I'm a CEO of a company, and I think one of the things I said yesterday in a tweet was that this wasn't a high school bake sale. We needed to actually maintain these controls and put this in perspective. When you get the trust of consumers and you're holding their money in custody, you need to be able to maintain that trust through tried and true controls internally and risk management and having governance, proper governance, all of these things. But what you just pointed out is that there is harm to the industry, even though this wasn't about anything with respect to blockchain, the technology, or crypto. The harm to the industry is the fact that this blew up and many, many consumers are harmed as a result of it. And so that is going to take us a few steps back from a public policy perspective, and frankly, from just the communications perspective. But, you know, we're here to make this better, and we're here to have these conversations. And I love that you're digging into this because it's really important.
Danelle, you yourself have testified on the Hill on these hearings before. And, you know, the argument in hindsight, since we have seen what happened with FTX, is that Sam Bankman-Fried did have a very close relationship with a lot of these lawmakers. The CFTC themselves said they met over the last 14 months 10 times with SBF. To discuss the regulatory issue. I think his words were that he was really, you know, sort of going at it hard with CFTC. And I wonder if, when you think about the legislation that has been introduced around how to regulate this space, to what extent that is now tainted because of the oversized influence that SBF had on Capitol Hill. Danelle, can you hear us okay?
I now can. Sorry, I lost you for a second. I think I understand, like the notion that your question about like knowing that these meetings happen and to what extent has that actually benefited or harmed the legislation. The legislation that was put together by Chairwoman Stabenow and Ranking Member Bozeman, in addition to co-authors on that legislation, was done so from a principled base. It was looking at their experience with the CFTC and understanding the benefits of the CFTC and what they could do, if properly funded, to be able to take over this spot regulation for the spot market. And that, importantly, is not something that Sam Bankman-Fried made up. And that is, importantly, not something that FTX influenced in terms of that creation of the notion that there's a gap there. So I think that to the extent that there was a lot of influence by FTX and Sam himself, it doesn't actually tarnish this legislation. The fact is there's a gap, and we need to fill that gap. I would love to see the gap filled with definitions around what is a security in this space and what is what remains a commodity. Understanding the balance between the SEC and the CFTC. These are things that need to happen because it actually creates regulatory clarity for the industry as a whole. And it actually allows consumers to feel much more protected. So these are all really important, despite the influence of maybe some players that didn't have their hearts and minds in the right place when they went to make these things happen.
Danelle Dixon, appreciate you joining us today to get your insights. Stellar Development Foundation CEO.
All right, so that was Danelle's remarks during the hearing. I'm going to give you my final take on everything we just saw this morning, and then I'm going to probably chill out for the rest of the day, maybe even drink myself into a coma, because holy shit was this a mess like we have never seen before. All right, heat map's going to serve as the background. I am going to tell you my completely unfiltered idea on what we saw. First things first, CFTC chair said that what happened to FTX was a bank run. This man is a fucking paid loser. Why? This was not a bank run. This was a mismanagement of customers' funds, otherwise known as theft, because you're not allowed to use customer funds to gamble with. They also did not have proper corporate controls, accounting controls. In fact, a story came out that they didn't even know what some of their accounts were, like they weren't even labeled correctly. Okay, so again, CFTC chair, you're sitting here saying this is a bank run? No, it's a bank run after people found out what was happening with Sam Bankman-Fried. That is when it became a bank run. That's not the original problem, and that's the narrative that mainstream media wants you to see, that yes, this was a bank run, but that's the biggest falsity out there. He took customers' funds, used them to gamble. Now, speaking of customer funds and using them to gamble, this is why I'm extremely nervous. Nexo offers 15%. Qcoin is offering 300% on Bitcoin yield. Are you serious, everyone? It's because of these problems, because of the CFTC, because of the SEC, that you're going to see crypto get destroyed even further and further for longer and longer because of this. Here's the gist of what happened with the meeting today with the Senate, okay? And for those of you that are watching the live stream, you're getting this because I don't think I'm going to do a video about this later. I'm so pissed off. Here's the problem. We do not have a proper definition of what is a commodity or what is a security. Even the CFTC guy said, hey, we do have some stuff, defining it, but these digital assets are kind of different. We need to have that ironed out. So let me ask you this. What sense does it make to have any fucking law out there if we don't know what the hell is a commodity or what is a security? And the reason it's so big is because the CFTC takes care of commodities. Gary Gensler and the SEC takes after securities. But if both organizations aren't working together, if we don't have a framework of what decides what, then what the hell are we doing all this for? You make any fucking law you want. Seriously, make any law you want. What does it matter if you haven't defined what the problem is? You have to define the problem first, which is at the top of the pyramid, then everything else will flow down from that point. But until you can define what's a security or a commodity, you're going to have Qcoin f you over with 300% yield. Yep, that's right, everyone. Put your money into Qcoin and you let me know how quick you get burned. They're giving 100% on stable coins. Banks right now can only give you 3.5% max. How are they giving 100%? They're gambling with your funds. The United States government is not here to protect you. They're allowing this mess to occur. You guys know I am extremely bullish about the use case and development of crypto and Web3. But for those of you that are OG viewers of the channels, okay, here is one of the problems. When Biden's executive order came out, and Twitch Radio will know exactly what I'm talking about. He's been following this for a while. When the Biden executive order came out, I said one big thing, and that big thing that I said was this. This is a weak executive order that because of this is going to push out the window. There was no teeth of this executive order. The executive order was just a fact-finding mission, right? And guess what? It did nothing. There were no protections in there. Now we're 6 months past the executive order. We still don't have protections. We have people on the Senate going, well, what's a commodity? What's a security? And the CFTC guy goes, well, we don't really have that yet. And they're like, well, why are we here? As soon as the executive order came out as weak, I knew we were screwed. That's when I started doing my stellar XLM to 10 cents videos. That's when I started turning more attention to macroeconomic effects, because if the government is not going to protect you, that means they're going to allow this bullshit right here to happen. All right? The crap like this is Qcoin's 300%. 15% on Nexo. There you go. That's a huge problem that the United States government sees is here. They're like, well, how do we stop a future FTX problem? You stupid sons of fucking bitches, it's right up on my screen. Nexo, 15%. You want to solve another problem? How about KuCoin's 300%? It's right in front of us. How about Celsius on Twitter? On Twitter for 2 years, right? They say, oh, well, how come you're not fixing this stuff? For 2 years, Celsius had on Twitter that they were FDIC insured, which was a lie. 2 years that was on Twitter. The governments did jack shit about it. Right now, if you want to make money in the crypto industry, you're not making it investing in crypto. You're doing it with service providing, wallets, all that kind of stuff. Because right now, the governments are going to let you get screwed. In fact, did you guys catch all the stuff about them saying, hey, we're so proud that this didn't affect traditional finance? You heard that from several senators out there. And you know what else they said? We want to keep crypto out of traditional finance. Do you know what that means? That means no institutional money for XLM, XRP, our favorite cryptos out there. Why? They do not want our banks to get exposed to the mess that is crypto. They don't want to regulate it because they want to let this mess still happen. They're allowing the likes of Sam Bankman-Fried to go out there publicly saying that this was a cash run. Oh, poor Sam. No, he stole people's funds. And the big thing out here is all those senators were so proud. They were so proud that yes, this never hit traditional U.S. markets. We have to stop that from the future. And that's even what they said. Hey, let's keep crypto out of 401ks and IRAs. Let's keep crypto out of traditional banks. If it's kept out of traditional banks, that means those traditional banks would not have financial exposure to crypto, which means no institutional U.S. money getting into crypto. That's the message you got from the Senate today. They don't want to regulate crypto. They want to let this mess continue. They don't want to determine what's a security or a commodity because we know you can't go any further without that. And on top of that, they said they need more time to make this happen. How much more longer is this going to go? Think about this, all right? Let's pretend that Biden's executive order 6 months ago was nasty, like rough, like had a lot of juice to it, all right? Actually, it was more than 6 months ago. Holy crap. But anyways, let's pretend that had some juice. Let's pretend there was a crypto ban. You wouldn't have all of the problems that we're having now. They would be minimized to U.S.-based investors. You would be shielded even more. Now, would we want him to ban crypto? No, of course not. But it's the idea that if you put a freaking law in, you at least have something. They keep delaying it. The more they delay this, the more they're letting you get screwed. Look at Solana. Solana is mostly held by FTX. They had a huge portion of Solana. That bad boy is burned because of FTX. FTX, what did they meet with? They said 10 times. They met with them 10 times, and you're telling me a red flag did not go off going, dude, these people did not know what's happening. Come on. And I'm reading the comments. It's right. Everyone is going to get wrecked until we get regulations in. There's no institutional money, and there sure as hell isn't a sense of urgency from Congress, the SEC, or CFTC to determine what is a security and what is a commodity. That's why the XRP case is so big, because that's the one right there that determines a lot of crypto, whether it's a security or a commodity. Now, it doesn't matter whether it's a security or commodity. What matters is we start getting regs in place to protect people, to stop this bullshit of offering 300% yield. Here we go. I got it up on the screen. 300% on Bitcoin, 200% on Ethereum, and 100% on USDT. KuCoin is basically saying, hey, look, if you're dumb enough to believe in 300% and gullible enough to do it, we'll steal your money and we'll rug you. We'll steal your money and use it to pay people that were owed other stuff. That's a Ponzi scheme, everyone. Come on, how are they doing this? Banks right now on average, 3 to 3.5%. 3 to 3.5%. And these fucking morons have some magic pill that's giving them 3 to 100% APY? You want to fix the crypto industry? You want all of us watching this video to feel better about crypto? Flush these fucking losers out. Nexo offering 15%. How are you giving 500% actual returns, more than the national average? 500% higher than the national average. on your return next. So how are you doing it? How are you doing that in a market where the prices of crypto are down, 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 and down? Complete freaking disaster that the U.S. government is allowing to happen. The same U.S. government that when we did this meeting today, what did they say? They said that, oh, this was what, everyone? This was a bank run. He said it. The head of the CFTC, Rostin Behnam, said this was a bank run. He lied to the American public. He lied to all the viewers that watched the live stream. Lied to everyone that watched this across the world. He actually said with a straight face, this was a bank run. Not a mismanagement of money by higher ups, which led to people losing their confidence, which meant pulling money out of their exchange. You moron. You frickin' moron. You lied to the public. And the worst part about it is, you kept patting yourself on the backs about LedgerX and, ooh, LedgerX is the one company with the CFTC that was blah, blah, blah. Shut up. You're hiding in your narrow scope of victory, ignoring the other 95% of crap that's out there. You're telling me no one complained to the CFTC about FDIC insurance being lied through by Celsius. You're telling me no one complained to the CFTC about the 20, 30, 40% offered by Celsius. There wasn't one call because he said, hey, the only way we act is if we're called upon to act. Okay, fine. Then you know what? Maybe I should call up the CFTC tomorrow and tell them all these projects that I'm investigating right here on my screen and say, what about this, 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 and this? There's your public inquiry right there. That's the bullshit you're having to deal with, all right? This is the problem that we are dealing with right now. Our government does not want to act. Anyone that's in crypto right now that thinks we're at the bottom, you are so wrong. We are far from the bottom. We have so much more pain to come because there's no regulations. Venture capital. I just did a story on venture capital about a week ago. Maybe not even, maybe like 4 days ago. Here's venture capital stat for you, okay? Month of November. Had like $840 million of venture capital was dumped into the crypto market. That's a lot of money for the month, okay, of November. Like it was something like May, June, whatever, was $6 billion. So we went from $6 billion a month now down to like 800 something million. That's just venture capital. So venture capital is pulling out of crypto. Yeah, now institutional money sure as hell isn't getting in. Why? There's no FDIC style insurance. There's no laws. Most of crypto out there is centralized AF. And seriously, for you keyboard warriors that call this stuff FUD, that say the likes of XRP and XLM are centralized, you must be smoking some really good stuff. We're talking 30+% THC with 0% CBD to counteract the effects, because y'all must be crazy or cross-faded. They are centralized entities that people are too scared to get into, because they're so worried of the centralized control that they can manipulate the prices. Not just the centralized entities manipulating the prices, but does anyone out there know what's happening with the mango market guy, the guy that exploited it? He's open on Twitter. Hold on, you guys want to see something? For those of you that are watching right now, okay, I'm going to show you something. I'm going to show you how sick crypto is and why our governments across the world are allowing this to happen. So there's a gentleman I follow. Give me a second. I'm going to... Hold on, sorry. I'm all kind of fired up here. Oh, I just saw him. Here we go. This gentleman right here is the person that did the Mango Markets hack. He is literally telling you how he is exploiting all of these projects. In fact, what happens is he goes and he tells you who he's going to do next and what he's going to do. He puts it out there in public. So he's now not doing anything illegal. What's happening is, all right, is he's exploiting code. He's exploiting vulnerabilities. All right, and that's exactly what this is all about right here. The crypto market has zero protection. So institutional level money will not get involved. Why? Because you've got people like this that are exploiting it. The other problem you have, venture capitalists don't want to get into it. Why? Because it's too risky. You could put your money elsewhere. You know, you guys can make fun of me all you want for, like, you know, my choice of cars, my choice of stuff like that, right? But you know what the funny thing is? While everyone out there is in the crypto space, losing, one of the reasons why I bought, hold on, I'm trying to get my phone to rotate. One of the reasons why I bought this car right here, is because I'm going to flip it for 400 to 500% more than what I paid for it. I don't have to worry about losing my money, getting rugged, none of that. And that's my point. Venture capital is looking at opportunities like this. Are there other businesses out there that we can invest in that are less risky? Yeah, that's the big problem. Because crypto is so risky and there's like no cash in it, the ceiling isn't there anymore. And what really bugs me about this, all right, and I'm not trying to rain on anyone's parade, I'm just trying to give you guys the reality. Everyone out there that's like, oh, we're going to moon soon. How? There's no money flowing into crypto. There is no business in the United States now, bank-wise, that can invest in crypto because Congress, the Senate is specifically saying, we don't want that touched. Don't let traditional finance get mixed with crypto finance. So that then, it kicks out everything there. It kicks out institutional money. The U.S. is what propped up the market. The U.S. fiat is what propped up the market. And now fiat is getting eaten up by high interest rates. It's getting eaten up by all these projects that are getting wiped out. It's a mess, everyone. And the longer we go without regulations, the more we see these idiots up on the hill saying that what happened to FTX was a cash run. Here's a good go fuck yourself. All right, Benham, you could go suck my fucking balls. But that's the problem. You're being lied to, number one, and you're not being protected. They could have fixed this problem years ago, and they're allowing it to get worse, and they're allowing it to continue to get worse. You think FTX is the last one? Are you kidding me? No freaking way. Everyone out there is melting down. Everyone is melting down. Everyone. I don't know how many more times I could say it. Everyone is melting down right now. It is a crypto hot potato. It is who has the most cash to actually survive. Not the most tokens, but the most cash. All right? All of these projects out there are dumping large amounts for cash so they can still go. Twitch Radio chimes in. Gold, silver, real estate, buying up failing businesses. These are all better ideas. That's my point. That is actually why I was able to go buy this car, and I'm going to flip it for 400 or 500%. It'll take me less than a month. Less than a month, and everything I'm doing is insured along the way. So if anything happens, Big Daddy's covered. That's what money is doing out there, everyone. I love crypto. I love Web3, but Jesus, they're not protecting us. And if they're not protecting us, well, Big Daddy's not going to put his money in crypto. He's going to put his money in G-Rides. And then I'm going to flip those G-Rides after I fix them up, and I'm going to make even more money. Be very cautious with everything that you're going through right now in the crypto space. They are not here to protect you because guess what? Up in your face, you can earn 15% on Nexo. Banks can't even give you more than 3.5%, and Nexo gives 15. Come on, man. Come on, this is totally crap, all right? God. Yeah, and XRP for me, you're right. Blood pressure pill is totally right, man. It's nuts. It is totally nuts. Oh, and Mike in Clown World says, blockchain, XRP isn't going anywhere. Banks need a liquidity crisis solver. No, it doesn't solve the liquidity crisis because you have to have liquidity in the first place, okay? How do you access crypto? You have to take your cash and turn it into crypto. You don't just start with crypto. There's no inherent value to it. It's not backed by anything. So crypto doesn't solve any liquidity. All crypto is a mover of money, a store of value depending on what it is you're getting into. Crypto itself does not have the value unless fiat is put into it. That's why when you look at this, you guys are going to see it pop up on my screen here real quick. When you look at USDT market cap, okay, the reason the USDT market cap is so crazy is people are getting out of crypto, all right? There are several different ways you can look at it, okay? This is how it goes. This is how the phases went, all right? So when like Luna and FTX happened, you had a whole bunch of people that took their money out of cryptos, right? Their crypto individual projects and sold it and stayed in stable coins. And money looked sideways for a while, okay? And then what happened was we had more fallouts. After more fallouts, people said, screw keeping our money in stable coins. We're just going to off-ramp the damn thing. Fuck it. Let's just get out of the market. And that's what you've seen here. This is Luna UST. This is Celsius. This is FTX. Every time that happens, you could see more money is pulled out of the crypto market. All this pump right here, the pump up of Tether, amazing. This all had to do when fiat was pumped into our system. Fiat was pumped in, which led to speculation, a lack of government regulations, and everyone got burned. Very few people made money on crypto. A lot of people got burned. Whew, man, sorry guys. This kind of stuff just really bothers me. It really bothers me because I've spent a lot of time fighting for crypto. I spent a lot of time sharing the news, and this is just really, really tough to digest because we're watching governments in action just destroy one of our favorite technologies out there. What I'm going to do, I'm going to flip up some sound, put on the heat map, fix up a few things. I'm going to get on with my day. Say your thank yous and goodbyes to all your friends in chat. Don't worry, I'll be back. I just got so much I got to do today, and I did not realize this was going to take long. So I'm going to give you all a few minutes to say your thanks, and I'm going to play some music. If something comes up, don't worry, I will be in chat.